That wasn't my sister anymore. This is a story my grandmother told me. This took place around the middle of the 20th century, when America was still suffocating under the lingering shadow of the Great Depression, a time when people clawed their way through each day just to stay alive. Back then, my grandmother was only a young girl, barely older than I am now, and tonight, I will become her, take on her very voice, and recount the harrowing tale that haunted her and her younger sister for the rest of their lives. My name is Jocelyn. This story is about me and my only younger sister, Jessica. We grew up in a small mill town in North Carolina. As the old 10 years her senior, I had to grow up fast. I didn't finish high school. I had to drop out to work and help support our family. My life was all about responsibility and hard work, sheltered from the world. Jessica was the complete opposite. She was born when our family was more financially stable, spoiled since childhood, and blessed with a striking beauty. She grew up arrogant, defiant, and with a sense that the world owed her something. She never knew real hardship, and perhaps because of that, she never learned to be afraid. Her beauty was a gift, but it was also a curse. By the time she was 17, she was the belle of our town. Boys were always flocking around her, buying her gifts, taking her out. Life came to her so easily. She quickly fell in with a bad crowd and started dating a guy with a dangerous reputation. And then, tragedy struck. Her boyfriend was a drug dealer. Jessica, while not directly involved, was charged as an accomplice for knowing about his crimes and not reporting them. She was sentenced to over 3 years in the state penitentiary. The day Jessica got out of prison, everything had changed. 3 years behind bars had chipped away at her beauty. Her once vibrant face was now gaunt, her skin pale. She had lost everything, her friends, her admirers, her future. The only thing that remained was that same proud, defiant personality. After a few months of staying home, wallowing in self-pity, Jessica finally had to face reality. She needed a job. I had been working at the largest textile mill in town for years. He pulled some strings and got her a position on the factory floor. The mill was massive and steeped in rumors. The workers on the night shift would always whisper about strange occurrences in the women's restroom. They said they'd hear toilets flush in empty stalls, hear footsteps when no one was there, and see faucets turn on by themselves. Because of these stories, the female workers had an unwritten rule. You never, ever go to the restroom alone at night. When I told Jessica about this rule, she scoffed. "That's just a stupid story to scare kids," she said. "Do you think the prisons I was in were like some kind of park? I've seen things 1,000 times worse. A few ghost stories aren't going to scare me." And she proved it. During her first week on the night shift, Jessica always went to the restroom alone. On the first night, she went to the bathroom. A few minutes later, she came storming back to the production line, soaking wet and furious. She was cursing up a storm, claiming some crazy woman in the next stall had thrown wet paper towels over the partition to mess with her. She said when she went to confront the person, the other stall was empty. She was convinced one of our co-workers was playing a prank out of jealousy. On the second night, things escalated. This time, when Jessica went to the restroom, we suddenly heard screaming and the sound of something shattering from inside. A few of us rushed in to find Jessica alone, but acting as if she were in a physical fight. Her arms were flailing, she was shouting obscenities, and she even punched the mirror, cracking a large piece of it. When we pulled her out, she insisted that a woman had attacked her. But the workers who got there first were adamant she was the only one in there. People started whispering that she was possessed. And then came the third night, the most terrifying night. During our break, Jessica once again sulked off toward the restroom by herself. We watched her go, a sense of dread hanging over us. A few minutes later, she returned. But this time, she wasn't angry. She just stood there, looking at us and smiling, a vacant, horrifying smile. Then, she slowly walked over to the conveyor belt, picked up a thick leather patch used for sewing onto the back of jeans and put it in her mouth. To our absolute horror, she began to chew it. She gnawed on the tough leather, tearing at it with her teeth before spitting the mangled pieces onto the floor. We all knew. The person standing before us was no longer Jessica. Panic erupted. An older co-worker, a woman who had worked at the mill for 30 years, grabbed my arm. "Jocelyn, you have to go into that restroom. The spirit is from in there. You have to go in and pray. Ask it to let your sister go." In my desperation, I did as she said. I ran into the large, cold women's restroom. I didn't have anything to offer. I just clasped my hands together and began reciting the Lord's Prayer. I was crying, begging, "Lord, please, please save my sister." As I was praying, a woman's voice echoed from the far end of the long room. "She's been released. I'm over here now." I lifted my head and looked toward the voice. Standing at the end of the long row of sinks was a woman in a faded, old-fashioned yellow worker's uniform. She was standing directly in front of the long mirror that spanned the wall, but in the mirror, there was no reflection of her at all. I was so terrified my legs gave out. I scrambled backward and fled. As I burst out of the restroom, my co-workers rushed toward me. They told me that while I was inside, the possessed body of my sister had stared intently at the restroom door and said in a strange voice, "Let me go in there and play with that girl for a bit." After saying that, Jessica collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. We learned the story later, a story that had been covered up for years. The ghost was that of a female worker who had died in a factory accident a long, long time ago. Her spirit never left the place where she died. After that night, Jessica quit her job immediately. I continued to work there for a few more years, but I never again went into that restroom alone at night. The ghost who rode with us. This story comes from Cora. She was about 12 or 13 at the time, and she encountered a ghost at a roadside diner in Delaware. Cora's family lived in Philadelphia, but both her parents originally came from the same small coastal town in Maryland. Her grandparents, and even her great-grandmother, Gran Elsie, all lived there. Cora's childhood was filled with trips back home to visit family, but by the time she was 12 or 13, Gran Elsie was nearly 90 and in poor health. She was frequently in and out of the local Maryland hospital. Old age, one illness leads to another. Sometimes, when it got serious, the family would have to drive her up to Philadelphia for treatment at a bigger hospital. The trips were exhausting and expensive, back and forth, for half a year. Finally, Cora's parents suggested to her grandparents, "Maybe we should bring Gran Elsie to live with us in Philly. We're closer to the hospital. It would be easier if there's an emergency." The grandparents agreed, but warned, "Gran Elsie is stubborn. She won't want to leave her home. You'll have to convince her." Gran Elsie was from the old generation, deeply rooted in her Maryland town. She didn't want to leave. So Cora's parents took her down for a visit. Gran Elsie adored Cora. "Go talk to her, Cora," her parents urged. "Tell Gran Elsie you want her to come stay in Philly for a few months, just for a visit." Cora went in, hugged her great-grandmother, and pleaded with her for half the day. Finally, with the promise that it was just a visit for a few months, "We'll bring you back whenever you want," Gran Elsie agreed. The family loaded up their SUV, starting the familiar journey from Maryland to Philadelphia. Along the way, they always stopped at a familiar diner and race stop in Delaware, right off US 13. The name isn't mentioned. Cora's parents liked it because the food was good, reasonably priced, and the parking was easy. But in Philadelphia, Gran Elsie didn't get better. The unfamiliar city, the air, being away from her home. She couldn't sleep. Homesickness made her ill. She grew thin. Her condition worsened. For just 3 months, the doctor shook his head. "Take her home. There isn't much time left." Gran Elsie was very weak now. Not actively dying, but mostly unconscious, only awake for a few hours a day. In her lucid moments, she'd whisper, "Take me home. I want to die in Maryland." Her grandparents called too. "Bring her home. If she passes, let it be in her own home, peacefully." Cora's parents sadly packed the SUV again to take her back. This time, Gran Elsie was too frail for the back seat. They had to recline the front passenger seat all the way back, letting her lie down next to Cora's father, who was driving. He drove very slowly. Because of this, instead of reaching the familiar diner in the early afternoon, they arrived just as dusk was settling, around 7:30 or 8 p.m. Gran Elsie was sleeping deeply in the car. Cora's mother, named Sarah, told her husband, "Just leave the AC on for Gran Elsie to rest in the car. We'll grab a quick dinner and get back on the road." They parked the SUV right in front of the diner, and the three of them, Dad, Mom, Sarah, and Cora, went inside. The diner was eerily quiet, almost empty. They took a booth about 10 yards from the car. While they were ordering, they noticed a small group gathered on the shoulder of the road, directly in front of the diner. There was a priest in black vestments and a couple who looked grief-stricken, standing beside a simple white roadside cross. The priest was holding a small prayer service. "What are they doing, Dad?" Cora asked. "Looks like there was an accident here, honey," Sarah answered quietly. "They're praying for someone who passed away, right where it happened." Cora looked closer. Attached to the white cross was a small photograph. It was a young girl, maybe high school age, wearing a white dress. Cora felt a chill, both scared and curious. She huddled close to her mother, but kept staring at the group. The priest prayed, the couple wept. After about 10 minutes, they quietly left. Their food arrived. Sarah quickly fed Cora first. "Why don't you go play outside for a bit while Mom and Dad finish eating, honey?" Cora finished and went out to the front porch area of the diner. It was deserted. She wandered around, looking at things. Then she glanced toward the SUV. She saw Gran Elsie moving. Lying flat on the reclined seat, her arms and legs were flailing weakly, as if she were trying to push something away. Since the car windows were closed and the AC was running, Cora couldn't hear anything. She just saw her great-grandmother struggling feebly. She ran back inside. "Mom! Gran Elsie! She's doing something weird!" Her parents looked out. They saw Gran Elsie waving her arms. "Go check on her," Sarah told her husband. Cora's dad stubbed out his cigarette and hurried to the car. He opened the passenger door, leaned in, and seemed to talk to her. A few minutes later, he closed the door and came back. "What was it?" "I don't know. Gran Elsie was mumbling something delirious, kept saying, 'Shoo, get it away.'" "Maybe she just heard a noise outside and got startled," Sarah guessed. Cora, standing nearby, felt puzzled. I didn't see anyone go near the car, but she kept quiet. After dinner, her parents paid the bill. "Okay, Cora, go get in the car, honey. It's cool in there." Cora ran out ahead. She opened the rear door on the driver's side to climb in. As she stuck her head inside, she heard Gran Elsie cry out, her voice weak but filled with terror. "Go away! Going to Maryland! Not staying here!" Her great-grandmother still had her eyes closed, but her whole body was thrashing weakly on the seat. Cora jumped back, scared. "Dad! Mom! Gran Elsie's acting weird again!" Her parents hurried out just as they finished paying. All four of them got into the car. Sarah sat behind Gran Elsie. She leaned forward, stroking her great-grandmother's shoulder. "Gran Elsie, it's me, Sarah. What's wrong, Gran Elsie? Be good now, we're going home right away." She thought her mother-in-law was just anxious to leave. "Honey, drive." The SUV pulled out of the diner's parking lot. The moment the car started moving, Gran Elsie went completely still and quiet. Sarah sighed in relief. See? She just wanted to get going. But that was a misunderstanding. Gran Elsie was quiet because she was relieved to have escaped that place. They drove a few miles down the highway. Gran Elsie started whimpering softly again. "Sarah. Sarah." Cora's mother leaned forward again, putting her ear close to her great-grandmother's lips. Gran Elsie whispered something for a long time. Her mother's face went pale, and she just patted her arm soothingly. "No, Gran Elsie, honey. You must have been dreaming. There's no one else here." She sat back. Cora asked curiously, "What did Gran Elsie say, Mom?" "Nothing, sweetie, just talking in her sleep." She didn't want to frighten her daughter, but later she told her. Gran Elsie had whispered, "Get the girl in the white dress out of the car. She keeps pinching me. She's sitting on me. She wants me to get out with her. Why did you let her in the car?" Her mother thought the old woman was hallucinating from her illness. The car only had 4 people. Every seat was taken. There was no girl in the white dress. She just kept gently stroking Gran Elsie, trying to calm her back to sleep. A while later, everyone in the car was dozing except Cora's dad, who was driving. Suddenly, he called out softly, "Sarah, check on Gran Elsie. She's groaning and twisting around. Make sure she's not in pain." Cora's mother woke up. They were on a dark stretch of highway, no streetlights. She leaned forward again to check on her mother-in-law. This time, Gran Elsie whispered again, her voice raspy with fear, teeth clenched. "Get her out! She's biting me, pinching me! Get her out!" She grabbed Cora's mother's hand, her grip surprisingly strong, digging her nails in. A chill ran down her mother's spine. She didn't try to soothe Gran Elsie anymore. She just sat back in her seat silently praying. The car drove on in silence. About an hour later, they hit a rough patch of road. Cora was jolted awake by the bumps. She opened her eyes. The car was bouncing over potholes. Her parents were awake too, but just drowsily looking ahead. Cora sat up straight, looking around. Then she glanced down at Gran Elsie in the front seat. At first, her great-grandmother was facing the passenger window, but as the car bounced, her head slowly turned toward Cora, still wearing the same pajamas, the same scarf around her neck. But the face... Cora froze. The body was Gran Elsie's, but the face belonged to a completely different young woman. The face was pale, cold, eyes rolled back staring directly at Cora with absolute fury. She was so scared, she didn't even think it was a ghost. She just thought, wait, who's sitting in Gran Elsie's seat? She shook her mother's arm. Mom, who is that? What, honey? It's Gran Elsie. No, it's some lady. It's not Gran Elsie. Don't be silly, her mother snapped. You heard Gran Elsie talking nonsense and now you're copying her? She leaned forward to look. See? It's Gran Elsie. Cora looked again. It was her great-grandmother's wrinkled, kind face. She was confused and terrified. What just happened? She hugged her dad's armrest tightly and shut her eyes. From then until they reached Maryland, almost 3 more hours, Gran Elsie kept whimpering, drifting in and out of consciousness. Sarah, get her out. She's crushing me, biting me. Her voice grew weaker and weaker. They arrived in Maryland close to midnight. Her father had to carry Gran Elsie inside. The next morning, when Cora's mother, Sarah, was giving her mother-in-law a sponge bath, she was horrified to find Gran Elsie's frail body covered in bruises, scratches, and pinch marks. There were even faint handprints around her neck, as if someone had tried to choke her. Relatives came to visit and were shocked, blaming Cora's parents for not taking better care of her. No one could explain the marks. That afternoon, Gran Elsie began to slip away. She couldn't speak any last words. She just clung to her family's hands, her eyes wide with terror until she finally passed. Perhaps she had held on just long enough to get home. Once there, she could finally let go. Cora's parents had to stay for the funeral for several days before returning to Philadelphia. The story of the girl in the white dress seemed forgotten. A year later, it was the first anniversary of Gran Elsie's passing. Cora's family drove back down to Maryland. Unfortunately, the date coincided with a long holiday weekend. They decided to drive their SUV as usual, partly wanting the flexibility. That afternoon, on the way down, they stopped again at the familiar diner in Delaware. This time, despite the holiday, the place was even emptier than before. Not a single other customer. "That's weird," Cora's dad remarked. "This place used to be packed. It's a holiday, but it's deader than usual." They went inside. The owner recognized them and rushed over, looking relieved to see customers. "Oh, welcome back. It's been so slow lately." While her parents chatted with the owner, Cora sat at the booth near the window, looking outside. The highway, US 13, was busy with holiday traffic. She overheard her mother ask, "Why is it so quiet?" The owner sighed. "Ever since that high school girl got hit by a car right out front, people say the place is haunted. Customers are scared off. I might have to close down soon if things don't pick up." Cora wasn't really listening. She was watching the cars go by. Then she saw her, across the highway, standing right by the white roadside cross. A girl in a white dress with long, dark hair, flickering. A truck sped past, blocking her view. When the truck was gone, the girl was there again. Cora stared. As if drawn by an unseen force, she slowly slid out of the booth, walked out of the diner, and stepped toward the edge of the road. She kept walking, her eyes fixed on the girl across the highway. The girl had her head bowed. Then, slowly, she looked up. A face both strange and familiar. Cora gasped, stopping just short of the busy road. It was the same face she had seen on Gran Elsie's body a year before. Pale, furious, eyes rolled back, staring directly at her. She looked back. Her parents were still inside talking, yards away. Cars were whizzing past on US 13. Cora screamed and ran back into the diner, throwing herself into her mother's arms. "Ghost! Mom! Ghost! Across the street!" Her parents and the owner looked out. There was nothing there. "It's her," the owner sighed, shaking her head. "The kids? They see her sometimes? Come on, honey, eat your food. Don't look over there." She went and lit a small candle, placing it on a windowsill facing the road. They ate quickly and got back in the car, heading straight for Maryland. Cora's mother, Sarah, finally believed. She knew it was that same spirit who had tormented Gran Elsie on that fateful final journey. Later, whenever they drove back and forth, they saw that the roadside diner had closed down, abandoned. But Cora never dared to look toward the white cross on the other side of the road again. The Headless March. This story comes from Jay. He was about 12 or 13 at the time, and it happened on the outskirts of Mobile, Alabama. Jay is Cambodian American. His family moved to Alabama after leaving a refugee camp. He had a best friend named Leo. Leo was a local kid, tan, spoke with a thick southern drawl. The two were inseparable, always biking around, exploring the back roads and swampy areas near their town. One hot, humid summer afternoon, Jay and Leo biked further than usual. They rode without a destination, just enjoying the freedom. As the sun began to dip low, painting the sky red above the hanging Spanish moss, they found themselves on a deserted dirt road they'd never seen before. "Whoa," Leo said, stopping his bike. "You see that? That's the Dubois place." Jay followed Leo's gaze. Through a grove of ancient, moss-draped oak trees, a massive plantation house emerged. It was old Creole architecture with grand columns, wrought iron balconies wrapping around the second floor, and white paint that was peeling and stained yellow with age. It looked both majestic and incredibly eerie. "Who's Dubois?" Jay asked. He'd never heard of it. "You don't know?" Leo looked surprised. "Dubois died like 100 years ago. He was the richest sugar plantation owner around here back in the day. They say he was mean as hell, even hired his own private militia, mostly rough European ex-soldiers, they say, just to guard his house." "Who lives there now?" "Nobody. It's been abandoned forever. People say it's haunted. Sometimes those ghost tour buses come out here. Come on, let's get a closer look. The two boys walked their bikes cautiously toward the rusted iron gate, which hung half open. Inside, the once manicured grounds were completely overgrown. Weeds grew waist high. Wow, Jay whispered, it's huge. He'd never seen a house so big and old. It looked nothing like the modern houses in town. Why's it got so many windows? Jay wondered, looking up at the tall, dark panes on the second floor. No AC back then, Leo answered knowingly. Had to open them up to get a breeze. They stood there, leaning on their handlebars, just staring as the house sank deeper into the twilight shadows. Silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by the chirping of unseen insects in the brush. Then Jay heard it. Thump, 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 a steady, heavy rhythm, like boots marching in unison on hard earth. It wasn't coming from the road they were on, but from inside the overgrown garden. What's that sound? Jay asked quietly. He strained his eyes, peering into the dense foliage. Through a gap in the tangled bushes, he saw them, about 5 or 6 men. They were wearing dark, old-fashioned military-style clothes, maybe soft caps carrying long muskets or old rifles. They looked like some kind of old militia. They were marching in 2 neat columns, emerging from the shadows of the garden toward the gate. Thump, thump, thump. Is someone living here? Jay turned to ask Leo, but Leo wasn't listening. He was frozen, his mouth slightly open, staring straight up at the second-floor balcony of the house. Jay looked back at the marching men. They were getting closer, heading right for the gate where the boys stood. Jay felt a prickle of fear. And then he saw the most horrifying thing. The first 5 men looked normal, albeit pale and expressionless in the fading light. But the last man in line, that man, had no head. His neck was just a ragged stump, but the head wasn't gone. It was flipped backward, hanging grotesquely down his back, held on by a flap of skin, its dead, wide-open eyes staring directly at Jay. Jay screamed. He couldn't hear the marching anymore. He could only see that backward-lolling head staring at him. He wrenched his bike around and pedaled frantically. "Leo, run! Ghosts! Ghosts!" He pedaled about 30, 40 yards before daring to look back. Leo was still standing there, frozen by the gate, staring up at the balcony as if hypnotized. Fear for his friend overcame his terror. Jay gritted his teeth, turned his bike back around, yelling as he rode, "Leo, are you crazy? Run!" He didn't dare look at the ghostly guards again, focusing only on Leo. He skidded to a stop beside him, grabbing his friend's arm. "Go!" Jay's sharp tug seemed to break the spell. Leo gasped, his eyes wide with panic as he looked at Jay. "Ghost!" Leo shrieked, even louder than Jay had. "Run!" The two boys scrambled onto their bikes and pedaled for their lives, not looking back at the haunted plantation house. They rode for nearly a mile, back down the dark dirt road, until they saw the comforting glow of the town lights ahead. They stopped under a streetlight, gasping for breath, hearts pounding. "Oh my God," Jay stammered. Did you see them? The guards. The headless one." Leo shook his head, his face still pale. "What guards? I didn't see any guards." "You didn't see them?" 5 or 6 guys marching out of the garden. The last one..." "No," Leo interrupted. I saw him." "Saw who?" "Monsieur Dubois," Leo said, his voice trembling. "I was looking at the windows, and the middle balcony door opened. He walked out." He was wearing a long black coat," Leo continued. But he didn't have a head. His head. He was carrying it under his arm, like a guy carrying a football. And the head, its eyes were open. It was looking right at me. It just kept staring. I couldn't move. If you hadn't pulled me, I think I'd still be standing there. The two boys stared at each other, horrified. They had both seen ghosts, but they had seen completely different horrors. Jay saw the headless guards. Leo saw the headless Monsieur Dubois carrying his own severed head. They never went near that road again. Later, when they told the adults, they learned that almost no one lived near the Dubois plantation anymore. Many had tried over the years but were driven away by screams, the sounds of marching men, and the sight of headless phantoms wandering the grounds at night. That house belonged to the dead, and they did not appreciate visitors. lost him twice. This story comes from Jade. She's almost 40 now. In the year 2000, when Jade was 16, she lived in a small, somewhat conservative town in Ohio. Her family and Ryan's family, the boy next door, were close friends. Over backyard barbecues, the parents had always joked about setting the two of them up. That year, Ryan's family hit a rough patch financially, and Jade's parents suddenly started pushing the marriage, thinking it was a way to stabilize both families. Jade didn't hate Ryan. They'd grown up together and she kind of liked him, but neither was ready for marriage at 16. Jade's mother gave her an ultimatum. 1, you marry Ryan, stay in Ohio and live a life like mine. 2, I send you to California to live with your aunt. She'll get you set up with school and a job there. To Jade, both options were terrifying. Marriage meant leaving home, but so did California. But she was most afraid of wifely duties. At that age, in a conservative town, the thought of sharing a bed, of having kids, it terrified her. Everyone around her talked up California. Oh, San Diego's amazing, so much money, big houses. In 2000, California was the dream. In the end, Jade chose California. Before she left, she and Ryan met one last time at a small diner at the edge of town. Their relationship was more than friends, less than lovers. I'm leaving, Jade said. Ryan didn't fight it. Yeah, I'm not ready to get married either. You going? It's probably for the best. Write me a letter, okay? They said goodbye amicably, like two friends parting ways. Jade went to California, learned the ropes, and eventually opened a successful chain of small coffee shops. She got married, had 2 kids. Ryan stayed in Ohio, got married too, and had a son. When she'd visit home, they'd see each other like old friends and ask about each other's families. Fast forward to 2019. Jade was divorced by then. Her kids were older. She flew home to Ohio for Christmas. She met Ryan again. Ironically, he had also just gotten divorced. His son was older now, in college in Chicago. Ryan had moved to Chicago to be closer to him. Now, they were both free. They sat and reminisced. Jade said, if I hadn't gone to California, if I'd married you, I wonder how things would be. Ryan smiled sadly. If you'd married me, maybe I wouldn't be divorced. We'd still be together. They started dating for real. It wasn't the kind of like of 16-year-olds. It was the empathy of 2 people in their late 30s who had been through heartbreak. Jade said it was an intense love, as if making up for over 20 years of lost time. They hadn't even gone all the way. Jade insisted they just held hands, dated a strangely innocent love, like being teenagers again. They had a few months of this, and Jade was planning to return to California. Then, in early 2020, COVID-19 hit. I have to get back to California, Jade said. If they lock down, I'll be stuck here. My coffee shops, no one is there to run them. Ryan was worried too. I should probably get back to Ohio. Being locked down in Chicago is terrifying. It's better to be home. They had to say goodbye again, this time because of a pandemic. It's okay, they reassured each other. When this is over, we'll get married in California. They parted ways. Jade flew back to California. And then, one day, Ryan just disappeared. Texts went undelivered, calls went straight to voicemail. Jade panicked. She tried to get in touch for 3 days. She found a few of Ryan's distant relatives in Ohio, but they didn't know anything either. He said he was in Chicago, he hasn't come home. Jade was heartbroken. Did he get cold feet? Was he lying to me? She started having dreams. The first dream, she was in Chicago at night. She saw Ryan across the street. She ran to him, scolding, "Why haven't you answered me all week?" Ryan just smiled gently. "Don't worry, I'm not cheating on you. I have a reason. In here. My phone's dead and I can't charge it." "In where? I'll buy you a new phone." "I told you back in Ohio I'd buy you an iPhone and you refused." "Don't buy one," he said. "I can't use it anymore. I was captured. They put me in here. I can't go home." She woke with a jolt. What was that? She tried to forget it, burying herself in work. That night, the second dream came. She was lost, somewhere isolated. She saw a sign, Cook County, Illinois, but in a Chicago suburb she didn't recognize. She was panicking, and then she saw Ryan. "Ryan, thank God, I'm lost. Can you call me a car?" Ryan just shook his head, that same sad smile. "I can't go anywhere, Jade. I can't call a car for you. I can't take you home." "Why do you keep saying no to me?" "I'm in here," he said. "I'll take you to where I'm staying." He took her hand and led her to a massive building. It looked like a hospital. "I'm in here. They brought me here. My phone died. I'm really sick. I can't get out. I'm in here for good." She woke up, her heart pounding. 3 dreams in a row. Her intuition told her something was terribly wrong. She remembered Ryan's son. Back in Ohio, Ryan had been hesitant for her to meet him. He still loves his mom a lot. Let's wait. Jade knew the boy didn't like her, but she had to try. The 4th dream came that night. She dreamed she'd already arranged all the paperwork. She, Ryan, and his son were at the airport about to fly to California. She was happily explaining the check-in process. When the airline called their flight, she turned to him. "Ryan, let's go." Ryan stood still. "I can't go, Jade." "What? It's all taken care of. If I go, they'll catch me halfway. They'll test me, say I'm positive. They'll quarantine me. I have pre-existing conditions. I won't make it out. I'll be in there forever. But you take my son, please." He pushed his son toward her. "Son, go with Jade. Go with Ms. Jade." "No, both of you are coming." "I can't go. I'm in there. Forever." Jade woke up at 4 a.m. in California, tears streaming. She knew 4 a.m. in California was around 6 or 7 a.m. in Chicago and Ohio. She couldn't wait any longer. She found Ryan's son on Instagram and sent him a long, frantic message, explaining everything, her love for his father, the dreams. 5 minutes later, he replied. It was a single photo, a picture of an urn. "Ma'am, it's too late. My father's gone. He died of COVID in Chicago. I'm back in Ohio now." Jade's heart stopped. She hit the video call button immediately. The son, crying, told her the story. It turned out Ryan and his son had tried to sneak out of Chicago when the lockdown tightened. They took a back road, trying to drive through Indiana to get to Ohio. But they were stopped at a checkpoint and given a rapid test. Both were positive. They were taken straight to a makeshift field hospital, set up in a massive convention center in Chicago. Moi thu inhu trongiakmo kwa jad. They were taken there suddenly, with no time to prepare. Their phones died. No chargers. The ward had 40 people. It was chaotic. Not enough supplies. His father, who had a pre-existing condition, got very sick, very fast. "My dad died in my arms," the son cried, just 4 days after we got there. If she calculated the dates, Ryan had been dead for only 1 or 2 days when Jade had the first dream. His spirit had reached out to her immediately. They talked for an UR. Ryan's son finally understood how much Jade loved his father. A few months later, Jade remembered the dream at the airport. She asked Ryan's son, "Do you want to come to California? I'll take care of you. Your father. In my dream, he wanted me to take you." The boy, now an orphan with no ties left in Ohio, agreed. In 2022, when travel restrictions finally eased, Jade flew to Ohio. She stayed for a few weeks, helping the boy get his affairs in order. When everything was ready, she took him and Ryan's urn to the airport with her. They flew back to California together to start a new life. The entire flight, Jade herself was the one who held the urn, bringing him home to San Diego. She said she cried the whole way. It was all such a waste. At 16, they missed their chance because of childish fears. In middle age, they found each other again, only to have a pandemic rip them apart. They lost each other twice, and the second time was forever. The Listener in Charleston. My name is Leo, and I'm a tour guide. The story I'm about to tell you is a pretty common trope in my line of work. a young tourism student encounters strange phenomena at different hotels during his internship. Those experiences, as terrifying as they were, became invaluable lessons that helped me become better at my job. It all started when I was a sophomore at a prestigious university in New York, majoring in tourism and hospitality. In our classes, beyond the textbook knowledge, our professors, all of whom were seasoned tour guides themselves, would often spend the last few minutes of a lecture sharing real-world experiences. They taught us how to please clients, how to handle difficult situations, and of course, they shared stories about the supernatural. The advice to always knock on a hotel room door before entering wasn't a joke. Our professors taught us how to be tactful about it. Instead of bluntly saying, "I'm scared this room is haunted," we were taught to frame it playfully for the tourists. Ladies and gentlemen, it's customary to knock to show a little respect. You never know if a friend is already in the room, so we're just giving them a heads up to leave, so we can have the room all to ourselves and rest comfortably. These were the little tricks of the trade to avoid paranormal trouble. But theory is just theory. Everything got real when we started our internship. To save money, the university organized a long internship trip for our entire class. It was a road trip down the east coast of the United States, taking us through historic cities and having us stay in old, classic hotels. The first stop where things got weird was in Charleston, South Carolina. We were checked into an old hotel, one of the first to serve tourists in the city. It was beautiful in a classic way, but you could feel its age. Our group of young students was buzzing with excitement. During the day, we'd tour and learn. At night, the university organized a team-building event for us in the hotel lobby. My room had 6 guys in it. Among them was a friend named Simon. Simon was a sensitive guy, the type to get his feelings hurt easily. He wasn't a crybaby, but the smallest conflict would make him withdraw and go silent. During the team-building games, probably over some competitive dispute, Simon got into an argument with another guy named Brad. Brad was the hot-headed type who liked to tease people. The argument started in the lobby and continued all the way back to our room. Brad knew Simon's weak spot was his insecurity about his masculinity. He honed in on it. "You're worse than the girls," Brad yelled. "It was just a game and you're sulking. What kind of a man are you? Maybe you should just wear a dress and I'll let you win next time." Those words were like a knife to Simon's pride. He didn't argue back. He just started to cry. It was almost 9 p.m. and everyone was getting ready for bed. Humiliated in front of his roommates, Simon quietly got up and walked out into the hallway. The hotel hallway was old. The light from the dim yellow bulbs wasn't strong enough to dispel the shadows in the corners. Simon didn't want anyone to see him crying, afraid of being teased even more. So he walked to a pitch-dark corner near the fire escape, slumped to the floor, and cried alone in his misery. Seeing this, I quickly followed him. "Come on, Simon," I said gently. "We're all friends here. We still have a whole week together." Simon pushed me away. "Just go back inside, Leo. Leave me alone. Don't follow me." Hearing the choked-up sound of his voice, I knew he was embarrassed. I gave up. "All right, man. Just sit here for a bit and then come back to bed, okay? We have an early start tomorrow." I went back to the room, gave Brad a piece of my mind, and then lay down on my bed and started scrolling through my phone. Lost in social media, I completely forgot that Simon was still out there. About half an hour later, it hit me. Oh crap, Simon's not back yet. I looked over at the empty bed next to mine and felt a pang of worry. What's he so upset about? The mosquitoes are probably eating him alive out there, I muttered to myself as I got up to go find him. When I stepped into the hallway, I could see Simon's silhouette in the dark corner from a distance, but he wasn't sitting still. He was turned to one side, gesturing with his hands as if he were deep in conversation, explaining something to a person sitting next to him. But there was clearly no one there. Since I was still far away, I could only see his shape, not hear his voice. I was curious. Who was he talking to? Maybe someone on the floor below that I couldn't see. I tiptoed closer. When I was about 30 feet away, I started to hear Simon's voice. See, he cheated in the game earlier. He knows I'm not as strong as him, so he pushed me on purpose. He's always calling me a sissy. I didn't even do anything wrong. He was recounting every single one of his frustrations. I got even closer, now only a few feet away. I looked all around him, even peering down the stairwell. In a 15-foot radius around Simon, there was absolutely no one. I called out his name. Simon, who are you talking to? Let's go to bed. We have to get up early. Hearing my voice, Simon jumped. He stood up, no longer crying, and just wiped the remaining tear streaks from his cheeks. Strangely, he turned to the empty space beside him and said, "All right, thanks, man. I feel a lot better after talking to you. I'm gonna go to bed now. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow." Then, he turned to me and forced a smile. "I'm feeling better now. Let's go to sleep." On the way back to the room, I couldn't help but ask, "Who are you talking to out there, Simon?" "I didn't see anyone." Simon frowned. "Don't mess with me, man. I just got over it. I was talking to that guy from our university, of course. He was sitting right next to me the whole time. Back in the room, I kept pressing him." "I'm not kidding, Simon. There was nobody there." After a while, Simon started to look scared too. He asked me again, his voice trembling, "A guy was sitting right there next to me, and you're telling me you didn't see him? Wait, are you saying I was talking to a ghost?" At that point, the hair on both of our necks stood up. I told him what I saw one more time. Simon's face went pale as he began to tell me the whole story from his perspective. He said that after crying alone in the corner for about 5 minutes, he heard footsteps approaching. At first, he thought it was me. Then, he felt a hand gently pat his shoulder 3 times, and a calm, deep voice asked, "What's wrong?" He thought it was another student from our tour group, so he let his guard down and poured out his heart. The stranger didn't say much, just sat there listening intently, occasionally prompting him with short, simple phrases. "Oh, really? And then what happened?" "Uh-huh. Is that so?" These prompts were all the encouragement Simon needed. In his fragile state, he unleashed a torrent of words, explaining everything without noticing anything else. Only now, after I told him the truth, did Simon start to piece together the strange details. First, the person he was talking to spoke like a robot, only repeating a few prompting questions. Second, even though they were sitting right next to each other in the dead quiet of the hallway, Simon never once heard the person breathe. And third, for nearly half an hour, The person sat as still as a statue, without moving a single muscle. At the time, Simon was too caught up in his own emotions to notice, but now he knew. The friend who had patiently listened to him vent in the dark corner was a ghost. The next morning at breakfast, we asked our instructor about the hotel's history. He told us that a few years ago, a male college student on vacation with his friends had gotten into an argument. He was beaten to death by his own friends in a group fight and died from blood loss. After hearing that, Simon and I just looked at each other, not saying a word. We understood the spirit of that young man, perhaps because he too had experienced the pain of being wronged by friends, had appeared to listen to and comfort someone who shared his plight. The female tourist in room 313, continuing my haunted journey as an intern. Our next stop was Savannah, Georgia, a city famous for its ghost stories. The hotel this time was another old state-run establishment, even more run-down than the one in Charleston. To save money, we were all crammed into a giant dorm room with 6 bunk beds for a total of 12 guys. The most ridiculous part was that a room for 12 people with 12 smartphones had only a single power outlet with just 2 available sockets. That evening, after a long day of touring, our room descended into a war over the power outlet. A guy named Alex, getting fed up, looked across the hall. He noticed that the room opposite ours, room 313, had its door wide open. Inside, 2 double beds were perfectly made, the blankets and pillows arranged to hotel standards. It was clearly an empty room. Without telling anyone, Alex quietly took his phone and charger and went across the hall to room 313. He plugged his phone in and then sprawled out on one of the beds to surf the web. After a little while, he started to doze off. He was in that half-asleep state when he was startled awake by the click-clack sound of a rolling suitcase on the floor. He opened his eyes and saw a female tourist standing in the doorway. She was elegantly dressed, wearing a wide-brimmed white hat and pulling a cloth suitcase. She stood there, glaring at Alex with an angry expression, as if to say, "Why are you on my bed?" Alex was mortified. He mumbled an apology, quickly unplugged his phone from the wall, and ran back to our room, forgetting his charger behind him. When he got back, I asked him what was up. After he told me, I peeked across the hall into room 313 and saw that it was completely empty. There was no female tourist in sight. Alex and I decided to go back to get his charger, but when we looked everywhere, the charger was gone. Finally, as I sat on the bed, I felt something lumpy underneath me. I lifted the spring mattress. The charger and its cable were lying there, neatly placed underneath. A little later, another guy named Kevin, sick of waiting for the single shower in our room of 12, also decided to go use the bathroom in the empty room 313. While Kevin was in the shower, he also heard the click-clack of a rolling suitcase outside, followed by loud, aggressive knocking on the bathroom door. Bang, bang, bang. He peered through the frosted glass of the bathroom and saw a silhouette. Thinking it was us playing a prank, he swung the door open, ready to yell. But standing in front of him was the same female tourist. She was still there, gripping the handle of her suitcase, her eyes wide and staring at Kevin. He was so embarrassed. He stammered an apology and quickly tried to squeeze past her. In the moment he walked past her, An unnatural, bone-chilling cold washed over him, like walking into a meat freezer. He shivered and ran back to our room, muttering, "So embarrassing and so cold." That night, none of us got any sleep. All night long, strange sounds echoed from room 313. The click-clack of the rolling suitcase, the sound of high heels tapping on the tile floor, back and forth, back and forth. Every few minutes, one of us would creep to the door and look, and every single time, room 313 was empty, with the lights on and the door wide open. The next morning, we were all exhausted at breakfast and told our instructor what had happened. After listening, he just shook his head. "I told you guys," he said calmly. "To save money, the university only booked the large dorm rooms in the left wing of the hallway. The entire right wing, including room 313, was completely empty last night. There were no other guests in the hotel." After he said that, our entire table fell silent. Alex and Kevin, the two who had come face to face with the female tourist, just stared at each other, the color draining from their faces. We were not welcome. I was just a few months away from graduating. The university unexpectedly announced one last internship opportunity, a 10-day trip to Mexico, traveling entirely by bus. This wasn't a free ride. Each student had to pay about 30% of the cost. Still, it was a bargain. For me, this was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Despite being a tourism major, I had never been outside the country. My passport was still pristine. I managed to convince 3 of my close friends to join me, including Paul, who would become the main character in this final story. Our journey was entirely on land. We took a bus from the U.S., crossing the border into Mexico. The trip was long, tiring, and hot. The air in Mexico was much drier and dustier. After a full day of travel, we finally arrived in the historic city of Oaxaca and checked into our hotel. It was a colonial-style hotel that looked like it had once been magnificent, but was now old and tinged with decay. There were only 2 people at the reception desk, and they had to handle our entire student group of nearly 100 people. My group of 4 was the last to get our room key after an exhausting hour-long wait. It wasn't a key card, but a heavy metal key, visibly rusted with age. Things started to get weird the moment we stepped into the elevator. The ancient elevator opened with a horrifying creak. Inside, hanging in each of the 4 corners, were 4 wooden crucifixes with strange, unsettling carvings on them. We pressed the button for the 3rd floor, where our room was. The doors closed, but the elevator took us straight to the 4th floor. Figuring it was just a glitch, we decided to take the stairs down. A little later, because our rusty key wouldn't open the door, we had to go back down to the front desk. This time, we pressed the button for the ground floor, G. The elevator stopped on the 1st floor, right in front of the hotel's restaurant. It was as if the elevator was toying with us. It never, ever seemed to stop on our floor, the 3rd floor. When we finally got back up to our room via the stairs, a strange sight greeted us. The 4 suitcases we had left standing neatly in front of the door were now all knocked over, lying scattered across the floor. We brushed it off, assuming it was a prank by another group of students, and finally got into our room. The next day, our group decided to go for a swim to de-stress. The hotel pool was large and deserted. It was just the 4 of us, Paul was swimming when he suddenly let out a yell and scrambled out of the water, his face pale. Something grabbed my leg, he panted. I felt a whole hand. I thought it was you guys messing with me, but I looked up and all three of you were right there. We laughed it off, telling him he probably just got a cramp from all the walking. But Paul refused to get back in the water. He sat on the edge of the pool, his eyes still wide with fear. A little while later, another group of students from our tour came down to the pool. They saw us and looked surprised. "Hey, when did you guys get down here? We were just knocking on your door to get you to come swim," but nobody answered. I was confused. "We've been down here for over an hour. The room's been empty," the other guy insisted. "No way. I swear I heard talking and laughing coming from inside your room. I was banging on the door, but you guys just kept on laughing and wouldn't open up." Hearing that, the four of us just looked at each other, the smiles freezing on our faces. It didn't stop there. That night, we went out to the night market. When we returned to the hotel and opened our door, we all froze. The room looked like it had been hit by a tornado. Suitcases were opened. Clothes belonging to different people were mixed together and thrown all over the floor. This time, we knew it wasn't a prank. Paul was so scared his eyes started to well up. He just looked at us and nodded frantically, as if to say, "See? I told you something was wrong." We slept with the lights on that night. The next morning, it was time to check out. The plan was to bring our suitcases down to the lobby, leave them with the front desk, and then go up to the first floor for the breakfast buffet. Since Paul had a lot of scattered belongings, he told us to go down first. The three of us left our luggage and went up to the restaurant. But we waited for almost an hour until it was nearly time for the bus to leave, and Paul still hadn't shown up. We started to worry and went to look for him. The front desk confirmed that Paul had already checked out and left his suitcase there. So where was he? Just then, we saw Paul walking up from the back of the hotel near the pool area. He looked dazed and his face was as white as a sheet. "Where have you been for an hour?" I asked. "We were about to send out a search party." Trembling, Paul told us his story. He said that after checking out and leaving his suitcase, he went to the elevator to go to the first floor for breakfast. At that moment, a hotel employee, a Mexican man who spoke English, approached him. "Good morning, sir. Where are you headed?" the man asked. "I'm going to the first floor for the buffet," Paul replied. "Oh, the buffet is not on the first floor today," the employee said. "It has been moved to our poolside restaurant. Please, follow me." Trusting him, Paul followed the man out to the back of the hotel. But when they reached the poolside restaurant, it was completely empty. Tables and chairs were stacked up, and there was no sign of a breakfast service. Paul turned around to ask the employee, but the man had vanished. He started trying to find his way back to the main lobby, but strangely, he found himself lost in a confusing maze of gardens, tennis courts, and winding pathways. He walked in circles for nearly an hour, unable to find the sign for the reception. Realizing he was being led astray, he began to panic. In his desperation, all he could think to do was clasp his hands together and start reciting the Lord's Prayer. Paul swore that as he was walking and praying, He looked up and saw a statue of the Virgin Mary that he was certain hadn't been there before. The statue stood there, its hand outstretched, pointing down a small path. He followed it, and at the end of the path, he found himself standing in the main lobby right in front of us. At that moment, it all clicked into place. The bizarre elevator, the knocked-over suitcases, the hand in the pool, the voices in the empty room, the ransacked belongings. And finally, Paul being led astray by a phantom employee. There was only one explanation. Some spirit in that hotel, for whatever reason, had tried everything in its power to keep the four of us out of room 305. I am the owner of this house. My name is Chloe, and I'm a recently graduated accountant. This story happened around that time when I was looking for a part-time job to make some extra money. I found an ad on Craigslist. It was beautifully written, describing a couple who had just returned from Europe and were opening a coffee workshop, a space that was part cafe, part hands-on experience, where customers could learn to brew their own coffee and bake pastries. They were looking for a dedicated server for the 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. shift, and the pay they offered was excellent. I thought to myself, anyone who could write such a heartfelt ad must be a good person. I called the number and was invited for an interview. The coffee shop was located in a beautiful classic brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, New York. When I arrived, I met the owners, Julian and Isabella. They had only been leasing the house for about a week and were still in the middle of renovations. At first, I was a bit disappointed, thinking the job wouldn't start for at least another month, and I needed work immediately. But as we talked, I was captivated by their passion and modern way of thinking. They were a young, sophisticated couple, probably in their early 30s. If you need work right away, Julian offered, you can start now. Help us clean up and decorate the place. We'll pay you immediately, at an even higher rate than a server's. I accepted on the spot. In the beginning, it was just the three of us. Julian and Isabella were the perfect couple. They were affectionate and understood each other so well that a single glance was all they needed to communicate. I deeply admired them and quickly came to feel like part of the family. Their main task was to hunt for antique furniture to match the brownstone's classic soul. They'd spend their days at flea markets and antique shops, leaving me alone in the large house to clean. And that's when the strange things started happening. The house had a ground floor and 2 upper levels. The ground floor was the cafe, the first floor was the workshop, and the second floor was their private residence and storage. Sometimes, while I was cleaning on the first floor, I would hear the distinct click-clack of high heels on the wooden staircase. Thinking Isabella had returned, I'd rush out to see if she needed help, but the staircase would be empty and the sound would vanish. "Isabella, are you home?" I'd call out. Only the echo of my own voice would answer. Half an hour later, the couple would pull up in their car, unloading a new batch of antiques. Another time, while on the ground floor, I heard a door on the second floor creak open and then slam shut with a bang that seemed to shake the whole house. When I went up to check, all the doors were closed. Occasionally, I would even hear faint whispering voices from upstairs. It was unsettling, but I stayed. I admired Julian and Isabella so much and wanted to learn from them. Finally, the workshop opened, A few new employees were hired, but just a week after the grand opening, Isabella changed completely. The warm, lovely woman I knew was gone. In her place was a cold, sullen person who would lash out at the staff over the smallest things. But the biggest change was that she almost never came downstairs anymore. She locked herself away in their private rooms on the second floor. All the work of running the business fell on Julian's shoulders. He looked visibly tired and sad. The paranormal activities also became more frequent. One evening, as we staff were taking a break, a new waitress who was facing the staircase suddenly gasped, "Hey, get back to work. The boss is watching." We all jumped up, pretending to be busy. I glanced up at the staircase but saw no one. The new girl insisted. I swear I just saw her sitting on the spiral staircase up there, looking down at us. Just then, Julian's car pulled up, with Isabella in the passenger seat. They were just getting home from an outing, their faces tense as if they'd been arguing. This meant that the person my coworker saw on the stairs was not Isabella. That waitress quit the next day. Within a month, all of the original staff had left. The strangeness continued. The stockboy complained that supplies in the storeroom, like plastic cups and straws, were being tampered with. A few days later, we found dozens of cups, straws, and plastic spoons stuffed into a hidden corner of the storeroom, as if someone had been playing with them. The most terrifying event happened with a regular customer. Her name was Eleanor, a middle-aged American woman who had lived in Europe for years. She loved the workshop concept and came in almost every day. One evening, the ground floor cafe was particularly busy. Eleanor told us to go ahead and serve the customers downstairs. She was comfortable making her own coffee and cake in the upstairs workshop by herself. About an hour later, when things had quieted down, we heard Eleanor's panicked voice calling from upstairs. "Chloe! Chloe, can you hear me? Can you come up here and help me down?" I rushed upstairs. I found Eleanor standing in the middle of the room, clutching her chest, breathing heavily, her face pale with fright. Once she had calmed down, she told me her story, her voice trembling. She said that after she finished baking, she intended to bring her creations downstairs to share with us. But strangely, she couldn't find the staircase leading down. The room seemed to have become a maze. The only staircase she could find was the one leading up to the owner's private second floor. Thinking the owner's wife might be up there, she decided to go up and ask for help. She found a bedroom door slightly ajar. Peeking inside, she saw a young woman sitting at an antique vanity, her back to the door. Eleanor could only see the woman's face in the reflection of the old clouded mirror. It was the same figure my former coworker had seen on the stairs. Eleanor politely asked for help finding her way down. She said the reflection of the young woman in the mirror looked at her and smiled. A sweet voice echoed in the room. "Let me show you the way. I'm the owner of this house." Relieved, Eleanor thanked her. The woman stood up and turned around. And in that moment, Eleanor's relief turned to sheer horror. The face in the mirror and the face in reality belonged to two different people. The face in the mirror was that of a beautiful young woman, but the face that was now turning to look directly at her was the face of Isabella, Julian's wife. But it wasn't the Isabella she knew. Her eyes were closed, and her face was contorted in a silent weeping expression. One body, two faces. One belonged to the ghost of the house's owner, the other to the owner of the coffee shop. Eleanor was so terrified, she turned and ran. But she was still lost in the invisible maze until she heard my voice calling out to her. Only then did the path to the staircase seem to reappear. After that night, she never came back. I told Julian everything. With a heavy heart, he confessed to me that his wife had changed completely since they moved into the house. He'd often hear her talking in her sleep, but in a perfect, standard American accent, without the faint European lilt she normally had from living abroad for so long. Her taste in food had changed. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he couldn't explain what was happening to his wife. After Eleanor's experience, I quit. A few months later, I contacted Julian through Facebook. He gave me the sad news. The workshop had closed and they had moved back to Paris. He told me that Isabella's condition had gotten much worse. The ghost's possession had become almost total. Sometimes it would speak through her, claiming to be the owner of the house and demanding they get out. The business failed, their money ran out, and he had to use a family emergency as an excuse to get Isabella to leave the country. He said that even after they returned to Paris, she was still lost and confused for weeks. He had to take her to church constantly for prayers and blessings. Slowly, she began to return to her old self, and the last thing he told me sent a chill down my spine. One day, when she had fully recovered, Isabella turned to him and asked, "Julian, why did we close the workshop? I remember we had just opened. Why are we suddenly back in Paris?" His wife, Isabella, had no memory of the nearly 6 months they had spent in that haunted Brooklyn brownstone. For her, that entire period was just a blurry dream lasting a few weeks. She had no idea that while she was lost in that fog, a ghost had been living her life, destroying the dream they had spent 10 years building together. The ghost was in love with me. My name is Noah. This happened a few years ago on a trip that was supposed to be a fun getaway but turned into a nightmare instead. It was my junior year of college. My group of friends was basically split into 2 camps, the couples and the single guys. Me and my best friend Leo were in the second camp. For spring break that year, we all decided on a road trip. There were 6 of us in total, me and Leo and 2 couples, Ethan and his girlfriend Chloe, and Liam and his girlfriend Maya. The plan was simple. Drive up to the Catskill Mountains in New York, get some fresh air, and escape the city for a few days. Originally, we were going to book a normal hotel in one of the main towns. But as we were driving up, about half an hour from our destination, Chloe, Ethan's girlfriend, suddenly shouted. Chloe was the romantic type, always looking for something unique and aesthetic. She'd been scrolling through Airbnb and found a secluded cabin deep in the woods. "Oh my God, you guys, look at this," she said, holding up her phone. "It's a genuine log cabin. It has a yard, a BBQ pit. It looks like something out of a movie. Can we please stay here?" At first, the guys were against it. Staying somewhere so remote would be inconvenient, but Chloe insisted. And when we saw how cheap the rental was, we all eventually agreed. We called and booked it right then and there. That was our first mistake. As we followed the GPS directions, the roads became more and more deserted. The cabin was at the end of a small, unpaved lane, hidden behind a thick grove of trees. I had to admit, though, it was beautiful, just like in the pictures. The owner, an older woman, was very friendly. She handed us the keys and then left. The property had 3 separate small rooms connected by a little garden patio. My room with Leo was closest to Ethan and Chloe's. And the first strange event happened less than an hour after we arrived. The person to experience it, ironically, was Chloe herself. Leo and I were unpacking when we heard a terrified, blood-curdling scream from the room next door. We rushed over immediately. When we got there, we found Chloe sitting on the bed, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. Ethan was trying to comfort her. "Let's go home, Ethan. I don't want to stay here. It's too creepy," she cried. We all stood there, confused. She was the one who had begged to stay here, and now she wanted to leave. After she calmed down a bit, she told us what had happened, her voice trembling. She said that while Ethan was in the bathroom, she was resting on the bed. The room had a large glass window covered by a thin curtain. Even though the doors were closed and there was no breeze, the curtain had suddenly lifted on its own. And in that brief moment, Chloe saw a young woman in a white dress standing inside the room, between the window and the curtain. The woman's long hair covered half of her face. The moment lasted only a second or two. When the curtain fell and lifted again, the woman was gone. After hearing her story, we all figured she was just seeing things due to exhaustion from the long drive. Even she started to doubt herself after a while. "Maybe I was just tired from the car ride," she admitted. No one wanted to ruin the vacation. We decided to put it behind us and get ready for the BBQ that evening. That night, we all gathered in the patio area between our rooms, grilling burgers, drinking beer, and laughing. Everything seemed to have gone back to normal. But as people started drinking more, I noticed Chloe began acting strangely. Normally, Chloe was a lightweight. 1 or 2 beers and her face would be flushed. But that night, she was drinking one after another, finishing every bottle. Ethan looked concerned, but Chloe just waved him off and said, "I'm fine." Her voice sounded different, somehow deeper and hoarser than usual. A little while later, her behavior got even weirder. Every time Ethan tried to be affectionate, putting an arm around her or holding her hand, Chloe would violently shove him away, shooting him a look of pure contempt. The final straw was when he leaned in for a kiss, and she slapped him hard across the face, right in front of all of us. We were all stunned. I just assumed she was too drunk and had lost control. A little later, I walked over to a patch of bushes to relieve myself. As I was standing there, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Chloe standing just a few feet away. In the dim light from the cabin, she was just standing there, staring at me and smiling, a strange, shy, yet inviting smile. "Chloe, what are you doing out here?" I asked, surprised. "You scared me." She didn't answer, just kept staring and smiling. I felt a little awkward and started to walk back to the party. But as I passed her, she reached out and grabbed my hand tightly. "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, pulling my hand away. "Ethan will flip out if he sees this." I quickly walked back to the group. A few moments later, Chloe came back too. She didn't say a word, just sat down and continued to drink, finishing beer after beer without a change in her expression. The party eventually wound down, and everyone started heading to their rooms. Leo and I went back to ours. In the middle of the night, I was in a deep, drunken sleep when I felt a warmth, and a gentle caress on my body. At first, in my hazy state, I thought I was dreaming, but the feeling became more and more real. I felt fingers unbuttoning my shirt, then slowly pulling my pants down. I forced my eyes open. Lying next to me, her head resting on my chest, was Chloe. I froze. I wasn't scared. I was in shock. This was my best friend's girlfriend. How could she be doing this? Chloe. "Are you insane?" I hissed, trying to push her off, but she wouldn't let go. She just held on to me tighter. Finally, with no other choice, I yelled out to my friend sleeping in the other bed, "Leo, wake up, get over here and help me." Leo woke up with a start. The moment he sat up, Chloe finally released me, but she didn't leave. She just sat there on my bed looking at me and smiling that same shy, unnerving smile from earlier. We rushed over to the other room to get Ethan and the others. When all 6 of us were crowded into my small room, Chloe was still sitting there. When she saw me, she tried to lurch forward to grab my hand again. By now, Ethan was furious and heartbroken. "You do this to me, Chloe, with my best friend." In all the chaos, only Maya, Chloe's best friend, seemed to keep a level head. "Wait a minute. Everyone," she said, "something is very wrong with her. This isn't like the Chloe I know." Hearing that, I suddenly remembered all the strange things that had happened since we arrived. I stepped forward, looked directly into Chloe's eyes, and asked, "Who are you? Are you Chloe?" The person sitting on the bed, the person wearing Chloe's body, just looked at me, smiled, and then slowly shook her head no. That one small gesture silenced the entire room. The air grew thick and cold. Right after shaking her head, Chloe's body went limp and she collapsed onto the bed, unconscious. When Chloe woke up, she was vomiting violently. She didn't remember anything that happened after she started drinking, didn't know why she was in our room, and had no idea why Ethan was looking at her with such anger and hurt in his eyes. We all stayed up for the rest of that night, too terrified to sleep. The next morning, we knew we had to talk to the owner. We found her watering plants in her garden. She looked calm, almost unsurprised to see 6 sleep-deprived college students at her door. After we recounted the entire horrifying story of the previous night, the owner just sighed. "I see," she said in a steady voice. "You all go on into the kitchen and have some breakfast. This happens sometimes, don't you worry too much. These woods are old. Some souls get a little lost." Her calm demeanor was both baffling and infuriating. "I'll call someone to help," she continued. "She lives down the road, knows about these things. You just eat. She'll be here soon." About 20 minutes later, another elderly woman arrived. She had a weathered look, like someone who spent a lot of time outdoors and wore several stone necklaces. The owner whispered something to her, and then they both came over to us. "Which one is Chloe?" the strange woman asked. Chloe timidly raised her hand. "All right," she said. "You come with me to the room. The rest of you stay here." Chloe was terrified and begged for someone to go with her, but the woman shook her head. "Just you. I need to speak to the spirit. Too many people will scare it off. Don't worry, I'm here." Chloe reluctantly followed the woman back into the bedroom where it had all happened. The door closed. We waited outside anxiously. About 15 minutes later, the door opened. The woman stepped out, her expression calm. "It's done," she said to the owner. "I'm heading home." She then turned to us. "You all should probably pack your things and go. It won't bother the girl anymore." After the woman left, we all crowded around Chloe, asking what happened. She said the woman simply opened all the windows, told her to kneel, and then lit a bundle of sage, walking around the room until it was filled with smoke. She murmured some words Chloe didn't understand, and then said loudly, "This is a guest. This is not a place for you to cause trouble. Leave now, or I will not be so gentle." And that was it. It was all over, just like that. The owner later refunded us for our remaining nights. "I apologize," she said. "I probably should have warned you, but don't think my place is the only one. This whole part of the Catskills has its share of ghost stories. You kids were just unlucky." Her words made us realize something. She knew about the ghost all along. She even had an expert on call for when things went wrong. We probably weren't the first to have our vacation turn into a nightmare. Before we left, Chloe asked the woman one last question. Who was that ghost? The woman looked at Chloe with a sad, knowing look. "Oh, she was a young woman," she explained. "Many years ago, she and her little brother got lost in a blizzard trying to find their way back to this very cabin. They both froze to death out there in the woods. Her spirit lingers, still looking for a friend, for some company in her eternal loneliness. Perhaps because you, child, are also young and beautiful, she felt a connection and wanted to be close." After hearing that, none of us said another word. We quickly packed our bags, got in our car, and left that place as fast as we could. They erased her. This story comes from Ava. She's almost 40 now. She told me about the time she was a young singer in Miami, Florida. She wasn't famous. She was just an amateur singer, performing at city events, tea parties at hotels, or occasionally as an opening act at upscale clubs in South Beach. She was passionate about music, had defied her parents to go to art school, but after 3-4 years of singing and still being unknown, she quit the business and opened a fashion boutique. But in those 3 to 4 short years, she saw enough of the dark side of the entertainment industry. She said the stories about curses and hexes in the business are all true. In Miami, people use Santeria or Palo Mayombe, Caribbean beliefs. A-list singers use it to lock down producers. Younger singers use it to take down the stars. But she's not telling those stories. She's telling what happened to her. That year, Ava was about 23, 24, still pretty naive. She knew another amateur singer named Roxanne, Roxy. Roxy was over 30, much more worldly. One day they went out to eat and Roxy was suddenly feeling generous, treating Ava to an expensive meal. Amateur singers like them made peanuts. A whole night at a club, if you got lucky with tips, might get you a few $100. So Ava was surprised. "Did you land a big gig, Roxy?" Ava asked. "Where'd you get this kind of money?" Roxy scoffed. "You think at my age I'm landing a big stage? No. You don't want to get involved. The money's real, but it's humiliating." "Humiliating how?" "Don't tell me it's escorting. I won't do that." "It's not," Roxy said, "but it's just one step below it. On a good night, you can make $10,000. $10,000. Over a decade ago, that was an unimaginable amount of money. Ava was curious. Roxy explained that in Florida, there's a super exclusive, isolated 5-star resort in the Florida Keys, a few hours' drive from Miami. It's a playground for the ultra-rich, not just regular rich, but tech moguls, real estate tycoons, and maybe even people from South American cartels. Occasionally, they gather there for secret, debaucherous parties. They need singers, but famous ones are hard to book and risky. They'd hire a few A-list stars and then pad the lineup with amateur singers like Ava and Roxy as openers. "You go in there," Roxy warned. You see nothing, you hear nothing, you say nothing. They take your phone at the gate. If one photo gets out, you disappear from Florida. I'm not kidding. But the money is good. Ava heard this and was scared. She wasn't interested. A few months later, Ava's brother got into gambling debt, owing a few $1,000s. The interest piled up. Ava couldn't make enough singing all month to pay it. She was stressing out when Roxy called. "Hey, remember that resort in the Keys? They're having another party next week. I was going to pass, but my slot is still open. You're in a bind, right? I can give it to you," Roxy added. "I'm telling you straight, the performance fee is just a few $100. The real money is in the tips. You have to wear something very sexy. Those old men will come on stage. They'll grope you, hug you, and stuff money into your bra, into your panties. You have to take it, but in one night, your debt is paid." Ava thought about it all night. Finally, she bit the bullet and agreed. That night, Ava drove to the resort. The place was incredibly isolated. She had to drive down a long private road through 2 security checkpoints. A guard checked her name on a list, took her phone, and then a golf cart drove her to the main party area. It was like a maze. The ballroom was massive, music thumping. Everyone was glamorous and wearing masks covering the top half of their faces. Ava was led backstage. The MC glanced at her. "Name? Ava? Okay, you're an opener. You're on at 8:45. You get 30 minutes, don't go over, the A-lister's waiting." She sat backstage for an hour. No one spoke to anyone. Everyone wore their masks, sitting in a corner, either tapping on their phones, internal-only ones they were issued, or sleeping. They were afraid of revealing their identities at such a humiliating gig. Hungry, Ava went to the buffet area. The buffet spread was huge but deserted, the lighting dim. The super rich weren't there to eat. They just wandered, taking a bite of something and dropping it. Ava was getting a small plate when she noticed a girl standing at the far end of the buffet, in a dark corner. This girl was stunning. Ava had to admit it. Perfect figure, perfect hair, wearing an expensive-looking silk slip dress. But she was piling a huge plate high with food. Ava thought, wow, she's gorgeous, but she's not worried about her figure at all. She turned to get a drink, and when she looked back a few minutes later, the girl was gone. But the heaping plate of food was still sitting there. Ava was curious. Why would she leave it? She got closer, looking at the plate. Even in the dim light and the air thick with expensive perfume, Ava could see something was wrong. The food looked spoiled. The noodles looked slimy, the seafood discolored. Just then, a cleaning staff member pushed a cart over. She glanced at Ava, then calmly picked up the spoiled plate, went to the trash, and scraped it all in. Then, she returned to the spot where the plate had been, clasped her hands and muttered a quick prayer for a few seconds before pushing her cart away. Ava's skin crawled. What was that? Why would you pray just for throwing out bad food? She still had 40 minutes before her set. She went to find the restroom. The hallway to the restroom was long and dark, with only dim mood lighting. She pushed open the heavy door to the women's room and was stunned. It was bigger than her apartment. Dozens of marble sinks, fresh flowers everywhere. She hurried into a stall. Just as she sat down, she heard high heels walk in. Clack, clack, clack. The footsteps were extremely slow, heavy, echoing in the silent room. Then she heard singing. A woman's voice, humming, no words, just Ava held her breath. Wow, that voice. It's incredible. She was a singer, she knew. That voice was special. Ava quickly finished and came out. The moment she opened the stall door, the singing stopped. She figured the singer must have left. She walked to the sinks, leaned down to splash water on her face, and looked up into the mirror. And she saw her. It was the beautiful girl from the buffet. She was standing a few sinks down, wearing the same dress. She was just standing still, not fixing her makeup, not washing her hands, staring into the mirror, but not at Ava. Ava was curious. She wanted to see the face of the woman with that angelic voice. She tried to get a look at her face in the mirror, but the girl seemed to intentionally turn away, her long hair shielding her. Ava thought, whatever, I'll see her backstage anyway. She bent down to grab a paper towel, just for 3 seconds, looked up. The girl was gone. The restroom only had one exit. Ava felt a cold chill. A draft of icy air brushed the back of her neck. She hurried out. Back in the wings, she looked around. She didn't see the girl. The other singers sat silently in their corners. Ava sat down, trying to compose herself. About 10 minutes later, she looked up. She saw her. The girl was sitting in an armchair in the darkest corner of the backstage area, her hair fluttering slightly from a fan. This time, Ava could see half her face. Still beautiful, but completely unfamiliar. Not a famous singer she recognized. Ava's phone buzzed. She looked down at the message just for 30 seconds. Looked up. The chair was empty. This constant appearing and disappearing was starting to terrify Ava. It was her time to perform. She sang 5 or 7 songs in a row to fill the time, waiting for the A-lister to arrive. No one in the audience cared. They talked, laughed, drank. Occasionally, a few old lechers would come up, stuffing $100 bills into her dress, groping her a bit and walking away. She felt humiliated, but she kept singing. On her last song, a slow ballad, she looked out at the crowd in despair, and she saw her. The girl was standing at the back of the hall, separate from the crowd, and she was watching Ava. She was her only audience. Ava was moved. She decided to sing this song for her. She looked directly at the girl, making eye contact, pouring all her emotion into the song. The girl started to move. She glided, weaving through the crowd, approaching the stage. Ava thought, is she coming up to sing a duet? But as the girl got closer to an empty space in front of the stage, Ava noticed something horrifying. The girl was gliding. Her shoulders weren't moving, and when she stopped in the open space under the spill of the stage lights, Ava saw it clearly. The girl was on her tiptoes as if wearing high heels, but her feet were not touching the ground. They were hovering a few inches off the floor. Ava's voice cracked. She was terrified, quickly looked away, and struggled to finish the song. When she dared to look back, the empty space was empty again. She finished her set and ran backstage. She'd made almost $7,000 in tips, enough to pay the debt. She didn't care about networking or meeting producers anymore. She just wanted to get out of there. But it wasn't over. She ran to the golf cart pickup area to get back to the parking lot. It was a kilometer away. There were no drivers. She waited for 5 minutes, panicking. Fine, she thought, I'll walk. She bent down, took off her high heels, holding them. She had just started walking barefoot. She heard a desperate cry behind her. Ava, help me, Ava. She turned. It was the girl. But she wasn't beautiful anymore. She was crawling on the ground. Her silk dress was torn and matted with blood. Her hair was a mess, her body covered in bruises, as if she'd been tortured. She was crawling toward Ava, holding out a hand. Ava, help me. They were so cruel. They killed me. They hid my body in here. Help me. Ava froze. She knew it was a ghost. But the sight was so tragic. But then the spirit looked up. It was the same furious, bulging eyes. Ava screamed, dropped her shoes, and ran for her life. She ran down the dark pavement, muttering prayers under her breath. The pleading cry echoed behind her. Ava, don't leave me. Help me. They raped me. They killed me. Ava! She could hear the shuffling, dragging sound of crawling, keeping pace right behind her. She didn't dare look back. She ran desperately all the way to the parking lot, where, thank God, the security guard was still there. Sir, help me, a ghost! She hid behind him. What is it, miss? Ava looked back. Nothing was there. The guard sighed. The singers who perform here, I've seen plenty. Just get in your car, go home. Don't say anything. Ava got in her car and drove like hell back to Miami. The next morning, she told Roxy. Roxy wasn't surprised. I've heard stories from other singers. Some hear singing in the toilets. Some see a girl crying blood backstage. One girl said she was singing and saw her sitting in the audience screaming. Who was she? Ava asked. I don't know, Roxy said. Probably some young, pretty singer who caught the eye of the wrong bastard. He probably was high, got too violent, and accidentally killed her. And those rich pricks, they erased her. Ava said she searched online, looking for any information about a missing singer. But there was nothing. Not one news article, not one post. As if the girl had never existed. See, Roxy said, we don't even know her name. You think anyone would believe you? Just stay quiet and stay alive. After that, Ava quit the business. She said that world was too terrifying. A place where a human life could be erased like a plate of spoiled food, and their soul left trapped, forever begging for help in vain. The odd-numbered room. This story comes from Mike. At the time, his company was holding a company retreat over a holiday weekend. Instead of the whole company going, they split up by department. Mike's group, the sales department, 15 guys in total, decided to go to Estes Park, Colorado, right by the Rocky Mountain National Park. In their group, there was this one guy named David. He was a really sympathetic character, scrawny, frail, always seemed to be catching a cold, and incredibly timid. In a group of 15 men, David naturally became the target of every joke. Even before they left, the teasing started. Hey David, remember to bring garlic with you to Estes Park. A guy as frail as you, a mountain ghost might just carry you off? David would just give a weak laugh. The more they teased him, the more he'd try to do the opposite. If they told him to bring garlic, he'd rather die than be caught with it, knowing they'd tease him even more. The group rented a 15-passenger van. On the way up, the jokes continued. Hey David, don't sit by the window. You might see a ghost waving from a cliff on the mountain pass. They got to Estes Park in the late afternoon. Since it was a holiday weekend, all the main hotels were booked or absurdly expensive. They ended up renting rooms at an old lodge tucked away in a canyon, no elevator, just several flights of stairs. Since there were 15 guys, an odd number, they booked 2 big rooms. One room for 8, 4 double beds, and one for 7, 3 double beds and a single. And of course, David got the single bed in the 7-person room. Rick, the boss, was the first to point it out. Oh boy, Rick said, clapping David on the back. Our room has 8, an even number. Your room has 7, an odd number. You know what they say about staying in an odd-numbered room, right? By the morning, it'll become even. The guys all laughed. Rick piled on. So, everyone's paired up. Who's sleeping alone? David? Oh, you're screwed, David. David just looked confused. Why, Rick? When you sleep, make sure you lie right in the middle of the bed, Rick winked. Why do I have to sleep in the middle? Because if you sleep on the left side, someone's going to be sleeping on your right. If you sleep on the right, someone's going to be on your left. Huh? Who's sleeping next to me? Are you Rick? Hell no, a female ghost, you idiot. Everyone roared with laughter. That's just the kind of guy David was. The first night. After checking in, the group walked around Estes Park and had a big dinner. But by the time they walked back to the lodge and climbed all those stairs, they were exhausted. It was around 11 p.m. and everyone was suddenly hungry again. But nobody had the energy to go all the way back downtown to get food. They all decided to just starve and go to bed. Mike was in the same 7-man room as David. About an hour later, Mike was drifting off when he heard the door creak, the sound of an old dry hinge. Mike opened his eyes and saw David standing by the door in his boxers. What are you doing, David? You're not going out for food now, are you? No, David whispered. I heard someone knocking. It was urgent, like bang, bang, bang. I thought maybe Rick's room next door had a problem. You're crazy, Mike mumbled. I'm right by the door. I didn't hear anything. Go to sleep. David looked into the empty hallway, confused, and shuffled back to bed. Half an hour later, knock, knock, knock. David shot up again and ran to the door. Again, no one. This happened 3 or 4 times. Mike was getting pissed. It's just Rick messing with you, man. Go to sleep. But how's he so fast? David argued. I heard the knock and opened the door immediately. His room is 15 feet away. How could he run back and get in his room that fast? I don't care. Just go to bed. The next morning at breakfast, David was exhausted. Man, someone must have checked in really late. I heard footsteps in the hall all night. High heels, men's boots, luggage being dragged. It was so loud. I didn't get to sleep until 3 or 4 a.m. The group was laughing at him, but then Rick, the boss, overheard. Check in. What are you talking about? I already told you guys. I booked the last 2 rooms on the top floor. This is the attic level. It's just our 2 rooms up here. There's nowhere else for anyone to go. No one is checking in up here. David insisted, but I heard it, Rick. It sounded like a whole tour group. They were even banging on the walls. The whole table went quiet, goosebumps rising. Mike turned to the boss. Rick, seriously? Did anyone from your room knock on our door last night to mess with David? No, Rick said, looking serious. I told them to ease up. We were all exhausted and passed out. Everyone else from the other room shook their heads. Oh man, David, Mike said. What if you actually heard a ghost? David just waved his hand. He was timid, but he was also a devout Catholic. He always wore a crucifix around his neck and didn't really believe in ghosts. Nonsense, David said. Someone must have just gotten lost on the wrong floor. That's all. The second night. Learning their lesson, the 7 guys in the room decided to stop at a convenience store. They bought 7-cup noodles to keep in the room. At first, David refused. I'm not hungry. You guys just buy 6. Dude, just get 1. We're not going to listen to you complain when you smell us cooking. Sure enough, at 11 p.m., the hot water was running, and the smell of ramen filled the cold Estes Park air. Okay, make me 1 too, David finally admitted. The other 6 guys devoured theirs. David, with his small appetite, only ate about half his cup and set it aside. The trash can in the room was tiny. It couldn't hold 7 cups. Just stack the empty ones by the door, Mike said. Leave David's on its own. It's still half full. That night, everyone slept soundly. No footsteps, no knocking. The next morning, Mike was the one cleaning up. He gathered the 6 stacked empty cups. But when he looked at David's cup, it was spotless. Not a single noodle, no broth, the little bits of sausage. Gone. David, Mike yelled, did you get hungry and eat it last night? Man, that's gross. It was probably swollen up like a sponge by then. Are you crazy? David yelled back from the bathroom. I ate half and left it. I'm not eating that leftover trash. Well, if you didn't eat it, who did? It's completely clean. The whole group gathered around. The teasing started all over again. Come on, David, it's okay to be hungry. You don't have to sneak eat your old noodles. David turned red, screaming, I'm telling you I didn't eat it. Stop messing with me. For the rest of the day, David was the butt of the joke. At lunch, eat up, David. Don't save it for a midnight snack. He was furious, but no one believed him. The third and final night, the group got back late, exhausted. No one bothered with food. They all just collapsed into bed. In the middle of the night, Mike and the entire room were jolted awake by David screaming. But it wasn't a scream for help. It was a scream of Latin and desperate prayers. Sancta Maria Mater Dei! Jesus Christ, help me! Mike flipped on the lights. The scene was terrifying. David was huddled in the corner of the room. He had yanked his crucifix off his neck so hard, it left a red welt. He was holding the cross out with both hands, aiming it at the wardrobe in the corner. Go! Get out! In Jesus' name, go! He was sobbing, completely hysterical. The group looked at the wardrobe, and there, under the leg, was the half-eaten mess of noodles and sausage from the night before. It was now spoiled, swollen, and smelled sour. The ghost hadn't eaten it. It had hidden it, and now it had brought it back. David! Mike ran over. What did you see? It was eating the ghost. The thing was eating it, David babbled. The group was so scared, they grabbed David and ran to Rick's room. All 15 grown men crammed into the 8-person room, locking the door. When David finally calmed down, he told them, he woke up to the sound of chewing, loud, wet, sloppy chewing. He thought his friends were eating snacks without him. He looked around. All 6 were in their beds, asleep. The chewing was coming from the corner by the wardrobe. He looked closely. There was a woman wearing a thick wool sweater and a knit cap, squatting, facing the wardrobe. She was picking something up off the floor and eating it. David, still not believing in ghosts, thought a guest had wandered into the wrong room. He got up and walked closer. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you in the wrong room?" The woman kept eating. David got closer, about 3 or 4 feet away. When he asked again, the woman stopped chewing. She kept her body perfectly still, squatting, and rotated her head 180 degrees to face him. What David saw was not a face. It was smooth skin, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, and smeared all over that blank, faceless surface was the soggy, spoiled ramen and bits of sausage. It wasn't eating the noodles, it was wearing them. David said he had never believed in ghosts his entire life. But seeing that, he snapped. He fell backward, ripping the crucifix from his neck, and just crab-walked backward toward his bed, screaming and praying. This time, no one dared to say David was lying. All 15 men stayed awake, crammed in that one room until sunrise. The next morning, they checked out and drove straight home without looking back. The Empty Coffin. My name is Holly, and this story isn't about me. It's about the woman who used to live next door, a woman this town will never forget. Our small town in Louisiana is a very traditional place. Everyone knows everyone else, and the old founding families are held in high regard. My neighbors, the Duvals, were one of those families. They were a large clan, making up nearly half the town. Most of them were successful, doctors, lawyers, even the town sheriff. In a respectable and strict family like that, there was no room for error, except for one person, Clara Duval. In her youth, Clara was the town's beauty queen. She had a breathtaking beauty, but as the old saying goes, beauty and tragedy often walk hand in hand. Her looks made her proud and complacent. She didn't strive for an education or a career like her cousins did. Clara's teenage years were a storm of rebellion. She dated boys her family disapproved of. Whispers and jealous gossip began to spread, even among her own relatives. They called her wild, a stain on the family's good name. But the more they tried to control her, the more reckless she became. The breaking point came when she was 17. She got pregnant. The Duval family, desperate to protect their reputation, demanded she get an abortion. But out of love for her unborn child, Clara did the unthinkable. She ran away with her boyfriend, a good-for-nothing from the wrong side of the tracks. She was gone for over a decade. By the time Clara returned, I was just a little girl. She came back a widow after her abusive husband died in a car crash. With her were 2 children, the son she had run away to protect, Dylan, now about 14, and a younger daughter named Leah. Clara confessed to her family that her life for the past decade had been a living hell, filled with beatings and bitterness. The Duval family, though displeased, took her back in. But she and her children were treated as outcasts by the rest of the clan. Dylan, especially, was seen as a living symbol of his mother's shame. He was often ordered around and treated cruelly by his uncles and aunts. One day, Dylan, now 15, came home and told his mother he wanted to get a job on a shrimp boat. He wanted to earn money for a new bike, but deep down, he just wanted to escape the oppressive, judgmental atmosphere of the house. Clara, seeing that her son's life at home was already a kind of misery, thought that leaving might be his only escape. She agreed. She had no idea it would be the most tragic mistake of her life. In the week leading up to Dylan's departure, Clara began to have nightmares. The first dream, she saw her dead husband return. He threw a ceramic bowl at her head and screamed, "Are you crazy? Dylan can't swim. You let him go out on the ocean, you're sending him to his death." Clara jolted awake, and when she reached up to her head, she felt a real, painful lump forming right where the bowl had hit her in the dream. The second dream, a few nights later, her husband appeared again. This time, he grabbed her by the hair, shoved her head into a basin of water, and roared the same warning. She woke up gasping for air, and the next morning, the back of her neck was covered in dark bruises that looked exactly like fingerprints. The final dream. The night before Dylan was set to leave, the nightmare was at its most terrifying. Her husband appeared and slapped her across the face over and over. This time, he delivered a chillingly specific prophecy. He'll be crossing from one boat to another to get some food. A wave will hit, he'll slip and fall in, and no one will even notice. His funeral is going to be an empty casket. Clara woke up to find her entire face swollen, as if she'd been physically beaten. In a panic, she went to find Dylan to stop him, but it was too late. The boat had left earlier than scheduled. 2 weeks later, the terrible news arrived. The captain of the shrimp boat came to the house. The story he told matched the ghostly prophecy to the letter. While 2 boats were tied together to trade supplies, Dylan had volunteered to walk across the connecting plank. A sudden large wave rocked the boats, and he slipped and fell into the narrow gap of churning water between them. By the time anyone realized he was missing, Dylan was gone, lost to the sea. They never found his body. Dylan's funeral was held with an empty casket. Clara was completely broken. She had the empty coffin buried next to the grave of her abusive husband. Every day she would go to the cemetery and cry until she fainted. And every time she fainted, her husband would appear in her dreams, beating her and screaming, "Where is my son? You have to find him for me." Desperate, Clara began to pray. Not to God, but to the spirit of her dead husband. She cried at his grave, begging, "I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please, if you have any power, find our son. Please bring him home." After days of this, she had one last dream. Her husband beat her again, but then he said, "In 2 days, the boat named the Bayou Spirit will come to port. They have found him. Go and get our son." Clara woke up. Despite the pain all over her body, she ran to the docks and waited. For 2 days she sat there, and on the second day, a shrimp boat named the Bayou Spirit sailed into the harbor. The fishermen told a strange story. They had been pulling up their nets when a massive, unusual school of fish swarmed their boat. Thinking it was a sign, they cast their nets one last time. Inside that net, along with the fish, was a human skeleton. The remains were confirmed to be Dylan's. A dark miracle had occurred. The whole town was abuzz. The spirit of the abusive husband had, in his own violent way, fulfilled his duty as a father. Another service was held, and Dylan's bones were finally laid to rest inside his coffin. You would think the story ends there, but Clara's torment was just beginning. A few weeks after the second burial, she had one final soul-crushing dream. In it, she saw both her husband and her son standing before her. But Dylan was no longer her 15-year-old boy. He was a waterlogged corpse, his body bloated and torn apart by fish, his face a mangled ruin with only one eye left to stare at her. Then, the corpse of her son spoke, asking a question that shattered what was left of her soul. "Mom, Why didn't you stop me? Why did you let me die like that? That dream destroyed her. She couldn't bear to live, but she couldn't bring herself to die. A few days before she vanished, she came to my house and told my mother this entire story. She said she couldn't face her family, couldn't face her own guilt. Then, one night after the final prayers for Dylan were said, Clara quietly took her young daughter, Leah, and disappeared. For the second time in her life, she ran away from it all, leaving behind the graves of her husband and son, and a sorrow that could never be healed. No one in our town ever saw her or her daughter again. The Rusty Nail. This story wasn't told to me, but to my mother. It happened in the early 1990s, just a few months after she married my father. Back then, my mother had just become a bride, moving into a large family farmstead in a remote rural part of Ohio. My father was the eldest son, and the whole multi-generational family lived together on that sprawling property. My father had 3 younger siblings, including a sister named Carol. This tragic story is about her. Carol had children very young. She got pregnant at 15, married at 16, and had another baby right after. By the time my mother married into the family, Carol already had 2 sons, Timmy, who was 6, and Tommy, who was 5. My mom said those 2 boys were absolute little devils. They were wild, mischievous, and completely uncontrollable. As the newcomer to the family, my mom didn't dare discipline them, even when they drove her crazy. My grandmother had given my mother a beautiful sewing kit as a wedding gift, and the boys got into it, pulling the thread out and stringing it all over the yard like a spider web. My mom could only bite her tongue because Carol was fierce and always defended her sons. The tragedy began one afternoon. Carol's husband was tearing down an old, dilapidated barn on the property, leaving a pile of rotting wood and rusty nails lying in the yard. Timmy and Tommy, right after school, ran out to play on that wood pile. My mother was in the kitchen when she suddenly heard them screaming in terror. She rushed outside to a horrific sight. Timmy's foot was bleeding profusely, and his younger brother Tommy's hand was also covered in blood. After bandaging them up, she pieced together what had happened. While jumping on the wood pile, Timmy had stepped directly onto a rusty nail. He screamed in pain, and Tommy ran over to help him. But as Timmy pulled his foot up, the wooden plank flipped, and the very same nail swung around and tore through the palm of Tommy's hand. 1 rusty nail, 2 victims. In a rural area back then, people didn't always rush to the doctor for what looked like a simple cut. My mother cleaned and bandaged the wounds as best she could. A few days later, both boys came down with a high fever. Timmy's wound had become swollen and infected, and so had Tommy's arm. They were rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Both of them had contracted tetanus. The infection was too severe. Tommy, the younger one, passed away first. 3 days later, Timmy followed his brother. A single rusty nail had taken the lives of 2 children. The haunting began the very night Tommy died. That evening, the entire family had gone to the hospital to handle the arrangements, leaving my mother alone at the farmhouse to watch the property. She told me she couldn't sleep, her heart heavy with guilt, wondering if she could have saved them if she had taken them to a doctor sooner. As she was tossing and turning, she heard a strange noise from the backyard. It was a hollow, rhythmic sound. Thump, 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 like someone was banging two pieces of wood together. The sound was coming from the pile of old barnwood where the boys had their accident. My mother crept to the window and peered out. In the dim moonlight, she saw a small, dark figure squatting by the woodpile. It was Tommy. He was wearing his hospital pajamas, his back turned to her. He was holding a piece of wood and angrily, methodically, banging it against the pile over and over again. My mother was so terrified she couldn't breathe. She scrambled back to her room, locked the door, and began to pray. She just clasped her hands and whispered, "Oh Lord," over and over until the sound finally stopped. After Tommy's funeral, my mother went to the hospital to stay with Carol, as everyone was worried she might do something drastic. Timmy was still there, lying in bed, delirious with fever. That night, while Carol was exhausted and asleep, my mother sat in a chair by Timmy's bed, watching over him. She was dozing off when she heard Timmy whispering. He had sat up in his bed, his legs dangling over the side. He was staring at an empty corner of the room, having a full conversation by himself. "You're all better now, huh? That's great. You want me to go with you?" "No, the doctor won't let me go home yet. You go on ahead. I'll be home in a few days." The hair on my mother's arm stood up. She asked gently, "Timmy, who are you talking to, honey?" The boy turned to look at her. His face was gaunt from the fever, but he was trying to smile. "I'm talking to Tommy, Auntie. He's not sick anymore. He's standing right over there." He pointed to the empty corner. "He says he has a new house and he wants me to come live with him so he won't be lonely." My mother was speechless. Timmy slowly lay back down, still mumbling, "Tommy, Tommy, wait for me. We'll play together soon." The next morning, Timmy had a severe seizure and passed away. Several months later, my mother was pregnant with me. She told me she had a fondness for horror movies, especially the classic American zombie films. One night, she had to use the outhouse, which was still separate from the main farmhouse back then. To get there, she had to walk past the area where the old woodpile used to be. The wood was gone now, replaced by two small, fresh graves in the family cemetery on the property. As my mother stepped out of the outhouse, she froze. Standing before her were the ghostly figures of Timmy and Tommy. They were still wearing their pale hospital gowns. Their arms were stretched out in front of them, and they were slowly, jerkily shuffling toward their own graves, letting out low groans, just like the zombies in the movies. My mother stood paralyzed, too scared to even run. But just as the two figures disappeared behind their tombstones, a familiar sound echoed in the silent night. He, he. It was a mischievous, triumphant giggle. It was the exact same laugh Timmy and Tommy always had whenever they managed to pull a successful prank on her. My mother didn't pray this time. She just screamed and ran back to the house, shouting for my father. After that night, my parents decided to move out and get their own place. My mom says she doesn't think the boys were malicious. They were just kids, still playing pranks, not realizing how terrifying their games were to the living. But to this day, whenever she goes back to visit the old family farm, she still feels a strange heaviness in the air, as if her two mischievous nephews are still lurking somewhere nearby, just waiting for a chance to tease the ant they had once been so fond of. I'm still a virgin. This story comes from Tony. He's a grown man now with a wife and kids, but this story is from his past. Back then, Tony worked at an auto body shop in Philadelphia during the day. At night, he was muscle for a local loan shark. His job was, collecting on late payments, persuading people, busting up guys who were behind. He wasn't a boss, just a low-level guy, making a few $100 per job. And of course, the life of a low-level wise guy revolves around drinking at dive bars. Tony's crew was always a trio: him, Vinny, and Paulie. All three had their vices. Tony was into sports betting, Paulie was a straight-up alcoholic, and Vinny was hopelessly, pathologically obsessed with women. He'd burn all his money on them. The three of them each had their own beat-up car, but they were always in and out of the pawn shop. They had one rule: never pawn all three cars at once. They always had to have at least one set of wheels for work. Every night after a job, around 11 p.m. or midnight, they'd find a dive bar that was still open, drink beer, and eat wings. Every time Tony would be talking bets, Paulie would be yelling for another round, and Vinny would just be staring at any woman who walked by, whistling, harassing them. Tony said, one time, Vinny made him pull over just so he could lean out the window and smack a girl on the ass as she was walking by, then laugh his head off as they sped away. He was that kind of guy. One night they'd just gotten paid and their pockets were full. Where to? Tony asked. Gino's again? That place is a dump, Paulie grumbled. I know this spot. It's a bit of a drive out by the docks, but I hear the beer is cheap and the wings are good. Some couple just opened it. It's far. What if we get wasted? Let's go. A new spot. So Tony drove, Vinny in the passenger seat, Paulie in the back. Vinny started complaining as soon as they got on the highway. This road is dead. Not a single skirt in sight. Let's just go back to Gino's. At least the waitresses are hot. Will you shut up about women? Tony snapped. We'll hit a strip club later if you're that desperate. It's just not fun drinking without any women around, Vinny whined. They drove out to a desolate industrial area. Paulie pointed. Okay, that intersection, take a left. Tony was going a little too fast and had to cut the wheel hard. The sharp turn made Vinny, who was leaning out the window, fumble and drop his Zippo lighter onto the street. Shit, my Zippo! Tony slammed on the brakes. Hey, look, there's the bar, Paulie said, pointing. The run-down-looking bar was just 20 yards away. You guys go in. I'll grab my lighter and be right in. Tony and Paulie went in, ordered a pitcher and some wings. 2 or 3 minutes passed. The food started coming, but Vinny still wasn't there. What the hell is he doing? Tony looked out the door. He saw Vinny standing in a dark spot by the road, near a tree. Tony figured, he's probably taking a piss. They talked for a few more minutes. The table was full of food. It's been 10 minutes. What is he doing? Paulie said, annoyed. Tony looked again. This time, Vinny wasn't by the tree. He was squatting next to a collapsed brick wall a few yards away, and he looked like he was talking to someone. Must be on the phone with some girl, Tony thought. A minute later, Vinny sauntered in, a stupid grin on his face. What took you so long? Calling one of your girls? Tony asked. Phone? What phone? Vinny grinned. I grabbed my Zippo, turned around and saw this amazing girl sitting right over there. Tony and Paulie looked out. They didn't see anyone. This is where it started. Oh man, Vinny said, his eyes wide. An innocent girl, all by herself, wearing, like, pajamas or something, long hair, so hot. Tony and Paulie groaned, not interested. So I went over to talk to her, Vinny went on, not caring. She said her name was Daisy. She said she snuck out, came back late, and her parents locked her out. Her house is nearby. She was sad. Just sitting there crying. The spot Vinny was pointing to was a vacant lot, piled high with construction debris, broken glass, and old light bulbs. It was a junk pile. So I told her, Vinny continued, hey, My buddies and I are drinking over there. Come join us. She said she was only 16 and didn't drink. I said, don't drink, just eat. Then she said this. She said, no, I can't. You're two friends. They haven't seen me. If they saw me, they wouldn't like me. Tony got a weird feeling. She said, they haven't seen her? What's that supposed to mean? We're sitting right here. Yeah. And she said, it's too bright over there. I can't go. She's so shy. God, I gotta go get her, Vinny said, still excited. Where is she? I don't see anyone, Tony said, looking out again. What, she left? Damn, must have been you guys, Tony joked. She didn't leave, Vinny insisted. She's still right there. She's hugging her knees, crying. I'm gonna go back. This time you guys have to come with me. Vinny stood up again. Tony elbowed Polly. Hey, you getting a weird vibe? I don't see any girl. You think Vinny's on meth again? Is he hallucinating? Probably, Polly mumbled. Whatever, man, let's drink. They watched Vinny walk back to the junk pile, squat down, and start talking and gesturing to thin air. Come on, baby, they're nice guys. A minute later, Vinny came back annoyed. She's too shy. She's afraid of you. Tony, you're the handsome one. You go talk to her for me. Tony laughed. What if she likes me instead? I don't care who she likes. Just get her to the table and I'll take care of her tonight. Tony was curious. He wanted to see how crazy his friend had become. All right, fine. Let's go. Tony got up and walked with Vinny to the dark lot. See? Vinny whispered, pointing. Long hair, white skin. So cute sitting right there. The closer Tony got, the colder he felt. He saw nothing. Vinny, Tony stopped. Are you high? There is no one here. I was joking before, man, but there's nothing here. Vinny stopped his sales pitch. What are you talking about? She's sitting, huh? Where'd she go? Shit, you scared her off. Scared who off? There was never anyone here. Are you crazy? Vinny yelled. You think I'm seeing ghosts? I grabbed my Zippo. I saw her clear as day. She said her name was Daisy, 16, got kicked out by her parents. Tony wasn't listening. He was looking at the ground, right where Vinny said the girl was sitting. In the dim light from the bar, Tony saw a small white roadside cross hammered into the dirt. Leaning against its base was a faded school portrait. Tony's blood ran cold. He backed away. Vinny, hey Vinny, look down, right at your feet. What? It's just a cross, who cares? Look at the picture. Is that your Daisy? Vinny froze. He looked down, trembling. He slowly bent over. Holy shit, that's her. That's her, man. The two of them sprinted back to the table, pale as hell. What's wrong? Polly asked. Vinny, the idiot, was hitting on a ghost, Tony panted. It was real, Vinny stammered, his face green. That was her face. They lost their appetite immediately. They paid the bill, jumped in the car, and peeled out of there. All the way home, Vinny kept saying, drive faster, drive faster. They got back to Vinny's crappy apartment. It was only 11:30 p.m. You guys gotta stay with me tonight, Vinny pleaded. I'm serious, I'm scared. They grabbed more beers from the fridge and tried to calm down. Vinny kept talking about it. How can a ghost look so real? She was crying, breathing. I heard her talk, and he kept saying her name. That girl Daisy, I wonder how she died. Why was Daisy sitting in a trash heap? They drank until 2 a.m., passed out on the floor. Around 4 or 5 a.m., Tony was woken up by Vinny screaming. Tony and Polly jumped up and hit the lights. Vinny was on his knees in the middle of the room, slamming his head against the wall. Thud, thud. Then he'd fall over, scramble and crawl, absolutely terrified. Tony! Polly! Help me! She's hitting me! Get me out of here! I'm gonna die! What the hell? It's your apartment, man! Outside, anywhere! I'll pay for a motel! The three tough guys ran out onto the street and sat on the stoop of the apartment building at 5 a.m., shaking, watching old people go for morning jogs. Vinny's body was covered in bruises and scratches. She was hitting me, Vinny cried. That girl, I'm not saying her name, she hit me. They waited until the sun was fully up before Vinny would tell them. He'd had a nightmare. He dreamed he was driving and saw the girl hitchhiking. He thought, score, and pulled over. She turned and it was Daisy, but in the dream she wasn't shy. You invited me for a drink. Why'd you leave? I'm still a virgin. Don't you want to take me? I came back for you. She turned into this succubus, lunging into the car, grabbing him. He panicked and tried to push her away. You're trying to rape me, aren't you? She screamed. You thought you'd get me drunk and rape me, you bastard. She started clawing and hitting him in the dream. He woke up and found himself slamming his own head into the wall. All three of them were genuinely scared. That morning, they went back to the vacant lot, buying flowers and a candle on the way. They lit the candle, mumbling apologies. Daisy, we're sorry. Vinny didn't know. Leave him alone. As they were doing this, the owner of the nearby diner came out. Are you boys friends of hers? We saw her last night. The owner sighed. Poor kid. She was a good girl, smart, straight A's, just started 10th grade. But her parents are real strict. That night she came home late and her father locked her out. She was heartbroken, went over to that junk pile to sit and cry. Then a carload of young punks, just like Tony's crew, drove by. Saw a girl sitting alone, thought she was easy. They started harassing her. But that kid, she was sweet, but she was tough. She fought back, cursed them out. The guys got mad, started shoving her. They pushed her, and she fell backward, right into that pile of broken glass. They saw the blood, got scared, and took off. The neighbors heard the screaming and ran out, called 911, but she'd cut an artery on the glass, bled out before the ambulance even got there. Tony and Paulie felt sick. They just stared at Vinny. Tony realized that if it hadn't been those other kids, if it had been them on that night, with Vinny in that mood, the guys in jail right now would have been them. After that, Vinny changed. He was still obsessed with women, but he never, ever harassed a stranger on the street again. New. Story the number 3. My lease isn't up. This story comes from Kevin. Kevin's grandparents had spent their whole lives working in California, setting up their children and grandchildren to move to other states. But they themselves refused to leave California. Kevin was part of that plan, destined to move away eventually. At 21, after finishing school, Kevin decided against college in California and moved to Austin, Texas, where his parents had just relocated for new opportunities in the booming tech scene. His family rented an apartment in a rough neighborhood in Austin. It was a diverse area, Hispanic, Indian, Black. You'd even hear gunshots sometimes, but since they were new and on a tight budget, they had to accept it. Luckily, the landlord gave them a great deal on the rent. She told them, the previous tenant left everything behind. You just need to move in. She bragged, the last guy who rented here had expensive taste, bought all sorts of cool stuff on credit, all smart devices. Now, he's gone and left it all. When Kevin and his family moved in, they were stunned. The apartment was fully furnished, smart TV, washer dryer, sofa, beds. The thing Kevin loved most, a 75-inch TV and a PlayStation 4 in his bedroom. Kevin was attending community college and working part-time, but in his free time, he was glued to the tech. He especially loved the voice command feature on the TV. Hey Google, play some music on YouTube. The TV would instantly obey. His parents, who weren't tech-savvy, just shook their heads, but Kevin used it daily. The first few weeks were peaceful. On weekends, his parents would often drive to Dallas to visit his Uncle Mike for family gatherings. Kevin went a few times, got bored, and preferred staying home to play video games. Usually, his parents would stay the night. One Saturday night, Kevin was home alone. He decided to have a chill night in. He bought a 6-pack of beer since he was 21, some beef jerky, shut his bedroom door, and fired up the PlayStation. He played games and drank for about half an hour. Starting to get a buzz, he quit the game and switched to an NFL game. He used the remote. Hey Google, switch to ESPN. He got into the game, drank a few more beers, and started feeling pretty good. He tossed the remote on the table. Suddenly, the TV screen dimmed slightly, and the voice command prompt appeared. Ting tong. How can I help you? Must have bumped the remote, Kevin thought. He grabbed it and hit cancel. 30 seconds later. Ting tong. How can I help you? What the hell? Kevin muttered and hit cancel again. 5 minutes later, as he was dozing off, it happened again. Ting-tong. But this time, Kevin saw text start to auto-populate in the search bar, as if someone was speaking. The text read, "Hello, bro." Kevin froze. Who would command a TV like that? Must be a software glitch, he thought, and canceled it. 3 seconds later. Ting-tong. This time, the microphone icon pulsed red, as if it was picking up an invisible voice. After a few seconds, a new line of text appeared. "Hello, bro, I'm here." Who's here? Kevin started to feel a chill, even though he was buzzed. He canceled it again. This time, it came back instantly. Ting-tong. And the cancel button on the remote didn't work. The mic icon pulsed. A new line. "Want me to drink with you?" Kevin sobered up instantly. How did it know I was drinking? He looked around the room. No camera. Before he could process it. Ting-tong. The next line of text. "That Shinerbach isn't good. Try Lone Star." This time, Kevin shot up from his chair. Shinerbach was the exact beer he was holding in his hand. How could a TV possibly know what brand of beer he was drinking? Was it targeted advertising or ting-tong? "Need someone to talk to? I'll come out and talk." By now, Kevin was shaking, but also morbidly curious. He tried pressing the mic button on his remote. "No, I'm good. Leave me alone." It went quiet. Kevin let out a breath. Wow, American tech is insane. Maybe it sensed I was alone and was programmed to be company. He sat down, trying to focus on the game. 5 minutes passed. Ting-tong. A new line. "Do you want to see me?" "See what? You're a TV." Kevin was annoyed. He grabbed the remote. "No, stop bothering me." This time, it didn't go silent. It responded immediately. "Ting-tong. If you see me, you won't want to watch football anymore. I'm fun." No AI could say something like that. Kevin was terrified, but his drunken bravery took over. "Okay, where are you?" The TV was silent for 10 seconds. The mic icon just pulsed. Kevin smirked. "Gotcha. Too hard a question, huh?" Then, a short, simple line of text appeared. "By the window. Look left." Kevin's room had a large window, a few feet to the left of the TV. He hadn't drawn the curtains. He had just finished reading the words. Thwack. A loud sound, as if someone had slammed both palms hard against the window glass. Kevin jumped, whipping his head to the left. For 3 seconds, he saw a smoky, man-shaped silhouette standing right outside his window. It was tall, but he couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. The smoky shape dissolved instantly. But, left on the glass, perfectly clear, were 2 handprints, as if someone with wet hands had pressed them there. Kevin couldn't breathe. Ting-tong. He looked back at the TV. One final line of text. "Fun, right?" Kevin screamed. He lost it. He grabbed his keys, his phone, and bolted from the apartment. He was drunk, panicked, and just wanted to get away. He got in his car and peeled out of the neighborhood. He just hit the main road when blue and red lights flashed behind him. He was being pulled over by the police. They saw he was drunk and hysterical. He failed the breathalyzer. He was handcuffed and taken to the station. There, he tried to explain his story. The ghost, in the TV, it was talking to me. It knew what beer I was drinking. The cops just stared at him like he was insane. A drunk 21-year-old. A DUI, one of them muttered. Luckily, he hadn't caused an accident. They agreed to cite him for a lesser charge, but he had to be picked up by family. His parents, furious, showed up at the station at 3 a.m. His mother, Sarah, yelled at him all the way home. "Are you crazy? Driving drunk? You want to ruin your credit score and never be able to buy a house in this country?" When they got home, Kevin refused to go inside. He just sat on the steps. "Mom, I'm serious. I was drunk, but I'm not lying. That house is haunted." He told her the whole story about the TV. His mother, who barely knew how to use a smartphone, just said, "You're drunk and paranoid. That's ridiculous." But seeing how genuinely terrified he was, she relented. "Fine. You can sleep in our room tonight." The next morning, Kevin called his Uncle Mike in Dallas. "Uncle Mike, the apartment we rented is haunted." "What are you talking about?" Kevin told him everything. His uncle, who worked in real estate, was skeptical. A ghost that uses Google? That's a new one. All right, let me check the property's history. That afternoon, Uncle Mike called back. Kevin, get out of there, now! I just checked the public records. The previous tenant, he died in that apartment. That night, Uncle Mike drove over from Dallas. He sat down with Kevin's parents. The last guy who rented this place, he said, was a single guy, a total alcoholic. He died of alcohol poisoning right on that sofa in the living room. Died and wasn't found for days until the neighbors complained about the smell. The TV, the PlayStation, that was all his stuff. This landlord is a scam artist. She knows the place is haunted, but she keeps listing it for cheap to lure in new tenants. Someone moves in, gets scared out, and she keeps the security deposit. She's done this 4 or 5 times. Uncle Mike called the landlord on the spot. Hello, this is Mike. I'm the uncle of the Kevins family who just rented your unit. You failed to disclose that someone died in the apartment. You're running a scam. The landlord on the other end was defensive. I don't know what you're talking about. If your family wants to move out, they forfeit the deposit. It's in the contract. The deposit? Okay. Then I'll be taking you to small claims court for non-disclosure, and I'll post this story on every apartment review site in Austin. Let's see who rents from you then. The landlord, terrified of being canceled, drove over immediately. She confessed. Yes, the guy died on the sofa. Kevin had been sitting on it to play games. She said when she first went in to clean, the TV turned on by itself, and text appeared. My lease isn't up. Get out. She was scared and unplugged the TV, but it turned on anyway. It turned out the guy had a 1-year lease and had only been there a few months when he died. His ghost still thought he had a right to the apartment, and he was determined to kick out anyone who moved in. The landlord, seeing an opportunity, just let the ghost scare away tenant after tenant, pocketing their deposits. In the end, she gave Kevin's family their deposit back. Later, after the family had moved, Kevin's mother ran into the landlord at an H-E-B, a Texas supermarket. The landlord mentioned, you know, that apartment isn't haunted anymore. The guy's 1-year lease finally expired. He left. I'm renting it out just fine now. No problems at all. Kevin, hearing this from his mom, was stunned. He'd been lucky. He was haunted by a ghost who respected contract law. My lease isn't up. This story comes from Kevin. Kevin's grandparents had spent their whole lives working in California, setting up their children and grandchildren to move to other states. But they themselves refused to leave California. Kevin was part of that plan, destined to move away eventually. At 21, after finishing school, Kevin decided against college in California and moved to Austin, Texas, where his parents had just relocated for new opportunities in the booming tech scene. His family rented an apartment in a rough neighborhood in Austin. It was a diverse area, Hispanic, Indian, Black. You'd even hear gunshots sometimes. But since they were new and on a tight budget, they had to accept it. Luckily, the landlord gave them a great deal on the rent. She told them the previous tenant left everything behind. You just need to move in. She bragged, the last guy who rented here had expensive taste, bought all sorts of cool stuff on credit, all smart devices. Now he's gone and left it all. When Kevin and his family moved in, they were stunned. The apartment was fully furnished. Smart TV, washer dryer, sofa, beds. The thing Kevin loved most, a 75-inch TV and a PlayStation 4 in his bedroom. Kevin was attending community college and working part-time, but in his free time, he was glued to the tech. He especially loved the voice command feature on the TV. Hey Google, play some music on YouTube. The TV would instantly obey. His parents, who weren't tech-savvy, just shook their heads, but Kevin used it daily. The first few weeks were peaceful. On weekends, his parents would often drive to Dallas to visit his Uncle Mike for family gatherings. Kevin went a few times, got bored, and preferred staying home to play video games. Usually, his parents would stay the night. One Saturday night, Kevin was home alone. He decided to have a chill night in. He bought a 6-pack of beer, since he was 21, some beef jerky, shut his bedroom door, and fired up the PlayStation. He played games and drank for about half an hour. Starting to get a buzz, he quit the game and switched to an NFL game. He used the remote. "Hey Google, switch to ESPN." He got into the game, drank a few more beers, and started feeling pretty good. He tossed the remote on the table. Suddenly, the TV screen dimmed slightly, and the voice command prompt appeared. "Ting Tong, how can I help you?" Must have bumped the remote, Kevin thought. He grabbed it and hit cancel. 30 seconds later, "Ting Tong, how can I help you?" "What the hell?" Kevin muttered, and hit cancel again. 5 minutes later, as he was dozing off, it happened again. Ting Tong. But this time, Kevin saw text start to auto-populate in the search bar, as if someone was speaking. The text read, "Hello, bro." Kevin froze. Who would command a TV like that? Must be a software glitch, he thought, and canceled it. 3 seconds later, Ting Tong. This time, the microphone icon pulsed red, as if it was picking up an invisible voice. After a few seconds, a new line of text appeared. "Hello, bro. I'm here." "Who's here?" Kevin started to feel a chill, even though he was buzzed. He canceled it again. This time, it came back instantly. Ting Tong, and the cancel button on the remote didn't work. The mic icon pulsed. A new line. "Want me to drink with you?" Kevin sobered up instantly. How did it know I was drinking? He looked around the room. No camera before he could process it. Ting Tong. The next line of text. "That Shiner Bock isn't good. Try Lone Star." This time, Kevin shot up from his chair. Shiner Bock was the exact beer he was holding in his hand. How could a TV possibly know what brand of beer he was drinking? Was it targeted advertising? Or Ting Tong? "Need someone to talk to? I'll come out and talk." By now, Kevin was shaking, but also morbidly curious. He tried pressing the mic button on his remote. "No, I'm good. Leave me alone." It went quiet. Kevin let out a breath. Wow, American tech is insane. Maybe it sensed I was alone and was programmed to be company. He sat down, trying to focus on the game. 5 minutes passed. Ting Tong, a new line. "Do you want to see me?" "See what? You're a TV." Kevin was annoyed. He grabbed the remote. "No, stop bothering me." This time, it didn't go silent. It responded immediately. Ting Tong. "If you see me, you won't want to watch football anymore. I'm fun." No AI could say something like that. Kevin was terrified, but his drunken bravery took over. "Okay, where are you?" The TV was silent for 10 seconds. The mic icon just pulsed. Kevin smirked. "Gotcha. Too hard a question, huh?" Then, a short, simple line of text appeared. "By the window, look left." Kevin's room had a large window, a few feet to the left of the TV. He hadn't drawn the curtains. He just finished reading the words. Thwack. A loud sound, as if someone had slammed both palms hard against the window glass. Kevin jumped, whipping his head to the left. For 3 seconds, he saw a smoky, man-shaped silhouette standing right outside his window. It was tall, but he couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. The smoky shape dissolved instantly. But, left on the glass, perfectly clear, were 2 handprints, as if someone with wet hands had pressed them there. Kevin couldn't breathe. Ting Tong. He looked back at the TV. One final line of text. "Fun, right?" Kevin screamed. He lost it. He grabbed his keys, his phone, and bolted from the apartment. He was drunk, panicked, and just wanted to get away. He got in his car and peeled out of the neighborhood. He just hit the main road when blue and red lights flashed behind him. He was being pulled over by the police. They saw he was drunk and hysterical. He failed the breathalyzer. He was handcuffed and taken to the station. There, he tried to explain his story. The ghost in the TV, it was talking to me. It knew what beer I was drinking. The cops just stared at him like he was insane. "A drunk 21-year-old, a DUI," one of them muttered. Luckily, he hadn't caused an accident. They agreed to cite him for a lesser charge, but he had to be picked up by family. His parents, furious, showed up at the station at 3 a.m. His mother, Sarah, yelled at him all the way home. "Are you crazy? Driving drunk? You want to ruin your credit score and never be able to buy a house in this country? When they got home, Kevin refused to go inside. He just sat on the steps. Mom, I'm serious. I was drunk, but I'm not lying. That house is haunted. He told her the whole story about the TV. His mother, who barely knew how to use a smartphone, just said, "You're drunk and paranoid." That's ridiculous. But seeing how genuinely terrified he was, she relented. Fine, you can sleep in our room tonight. The next morning, Kevin called his Uncle Mike in Dallas. Uncle Mike, the apartment we rented is haunted. What are you talking about? Kevin told him everything. His uncle, who worked in real estate, was skeptical. A ghost that uses Google? That's a new one. All right, let me check the property's history. That afternoon, Uncle Mike called back. Kevin, get out of there, now. I just checked the public records. The previous tenant, he died in that apartment. That night, Uncle Mike drove over from Dallas. He sat down with Kevin's parents. The last guy who rented this place, he said, was a single guy, a total alcoholic. He died of alcohol poisoning right on that sofa in the living room. Died and wasn't found for days until the neighbors complained about the smell. The TV, the PlayStation, that was all his stuff. This landlord is a scam artist. She knows the place is haunted, but she keeps listing it for cheap to lure in new tenants. Someone moves in, gets scared out, and she keeps the security deposit. She's done this 4 or 5 times. Uncle Mike called the landlord on the spot. Hello, this is Mike. I'm the uncle of the Kevin's family who just rented your unit. You failed to disclose that someone died in the apartment. You're running a scam. The landlord on the other end was defensive. I don't know what you're talking about. If your family wants to move out, they forfeit the deposit. It's in the contract. The deposit? Okay, then I'll be taking you to small claims court for non-disclosure, and I'll post this story on every apartment review site in Austin. Let's see who rents from you then. The landlord, terrified of being canceled, drove over immediately. She confessed. Yes, the guy died on the sofa. Kevin had been sitting on it to play games. She said when she first went in to clean, the TV turned on by itself and text appeared. My lease isn't up. Get out. She was scared and unplugged the TV. But it turned on anyway. It turned out the guy had a 1-year lease and had only been there a few months when he died. His ghost still thought he had a right to the apartment, and he was determined to kick out anyone who moved in. The landlord, seeing an opportunity, just let the ghost scare away tenant after tenant, pocketing their deposits. In the end, she gave Kevin's family their deposit back. Later, after the family had moved, Kevin's mother ran into the landlord at an H-E-B, a Texas supermarket. The landlord mentioned, "You know, that apartment isn't haunted anymore. The guy's 1-year lease finally expired. He left. I'm renting it out just fine now. No problems at all." Kevin, hearing this from his mom, was stunned. He'd been lucky. He was haunted by a ghost who respected contract law. Prison rules. My name is Sal. I'm almost 50 now, living a quiet life. But my past was anything but peaceful. I won't use my real name. That part of my life is over, but it's still a part of me. I grew up on the streets of Chicago, working my way up as a debt collector for some connected guys. This was back in the 90s when the underworld still had its own set of rules. I wasn't a big shot, but I was tough enough to make a name for myself. And then, I had to pay the price. A brawl went too far, and I was charged with aggravated assault. After a few weeks in county, I was transferred to a place whose name alone was enough to make the hardest gangsters shudder. Parish Prison, one of the oldest and most notorious penitentiaries in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is where my story really begins. In prison, there's an unwritten rule called the welcoming committee. New inmates get beaten down by the old-timers to put them in their place, but I was lucky enough to skip that. Thanks to my street cred, nearly half the inmates in my cell block recognized me. "Hey, ain't that Sal?" "Sal, what the hell are you doing in here?" Just like that, I was at the top of the food chain, respected. I didn't believe in ghosts. To me, the only ghosts in this world were the living ones. I'd hidden from the cops for days in cemeteries, sleeping on graves, and never saw a single thing. So when the other inmates started telling me ghost stories about the prison, I just brushed them off. Bullshit. That stuff is for scaring kids. Worry about staying alive in here. In my cell block, there was a skinny, timid guy named Pete, but we all called him Mouse. Word was he was a magnet for paranormal stuff, always complaining about being held down in his sleep. I'd lecture him all the time. "You're just weak. That's why your mind plays tricks on you. Do some push-ups, man up. There ain't no ghosts in this day and age." I'd been there for about a month. One night, a few of us were gathered near the toilets, secretly smoking. Mouse, who was usually asleep by then out of fear, crawled over. "Hey Sal, can I get a smoke?" I was surprised, but gave him one. He'd only taken a couple of drags when he said, "Sal, can I get another one? The guy in the stall's asking for one." I glanced over at the toilet stalls. The doors always have a large gap at the bottom. I hadn't seen anyone go in there. But whatever, a cigarette was just a cigarette. I gave another one to Mouse. He lit it and slid it under the stall door. Strangely, the cigarette was taken, and I saw his empty hand pull back. I could even see smoke curling up from inside the stall. 5 minutes later, Mouse asked for yet another cigarette for his friend. Now I was getting pissed. Who the hell is in there? Goes to the toilet and smokes 3 of my cigarettes? I decided to see for myself. The door was stuck. Furious, I kicked it with all my might. Bam! The door flew open. The stall was completely empty. But on the 2 footrests of the squat toilet were 2 cigarette butts, the ash still long and intact, smoke still gently rising from them. I turned and grabbed Mouse by the collar. "Are you messing with me? There's no one in here." He was trembling. The color drained from his face. "I swear, Sal, he was just tapping me on the shoulder, asking for a smoke." The next morning, the moment my foot hit the floor, a sharp pain shot up from my soul, so intense it felt like I'd stepped on a spike. I collapsed. The bottom of my foot, the same one I'd used to kick the toilet door, was swollen up like a water balloon. The pain tormented me for a whole week. The other inmate said he got me and that I should leave a piece of bread at the stall door as an apology. I was still a hard-headed non-believer. After my appeal hearing, I was moved to a different cell block, CD. This place was tougher, filled with lifers. I had to start over from the bottom. I noticed a strange ritual in this block. Every evening after 6 p.m., whenever an inmate had to do a task, even something as simple as fetching water, they would always go in groups of 2 or 3. The guards saw it, but turned a blind eye. When I asked why, they told me it was because of the ghosts. At the end of the month, the inmates organized a sort of memorial. They didn't have incense or elaborate offerings. They just quietly took the most valuable items from their commissary rations, a candy bar, a can of Coke, and a single cigarette, and placed them on an empty bunk at the end of the room. They invited me to join, but I scoffed. "You guys really believe in this nonsense? I'm not doing this childish stuff. If you don't participate, don't eat the shared food. "You'll be cursed," one of them warned. I didn't care. When the ritual was over, they shared the remaining sweets. The smell of the chocolate was too tempting, and I took and ate a piece. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I crept out into the hallway to smoke my last cigarette butt. I took one drag, savoring it, and the cigarette in my hand instantly burned down to the filter in a flash of heat. "What the hell?" I cursed under my breath. Just then, a cold voice whispered right behind my ear. "Got another one, buddy. Just a few puffs to warm me up." I spun around. Standing before me was a man in street clothes, not a prison uniform. His face was gray, his lips were black. He kept stepping closer, repeating his request for a cigarette. I backed away in horror until I bumped into another inmate coming out of his cell. I flinched, and when I looked back, the man in street clothes was gone. The other inmate pulled me inside and told me the story. It was the ghost of Johnny, a prisoner who had died in that block a few years back. He died of an illness the night before he was due to be released. His spirit was so full of bitterness that it never left, forever wandering the halls, begging for a cigarette, the one thing he craved most. The inmates knew his story, which is why they shared their commissary with him every month. At that point, my disbelief was shattered. I encountered a ghost for the third time after another appeal. I was moved to the harshest cell block, a place for the truly violent. Here, I wasn't a cat anymore. I was a mouse. The block was run by old-timers, men who had been locked up for decades. One night, to get in their good graces, I volunteered to be the lookout while the bosses played cards. I sat by the window, watching the corridor. Around 2 a.m., as I was lighting a cigarette, whack, a searing pain exploded on my wrist. I cried out and looked up. Standing in the window's reflection was the figure of a man in an old-fashioned guard's uniform holding a wooden baton. He wore a cap that shadowed his face. "Go to sleep," he said, his voice low and authoritative. "What are you doing up at this hour?" Terrified, I pulled my hand back and warned the card players. Everyone scrambled to hide the evidence and pretend to be asleep. The next morning, my wrist was swollen and had a perfectly circular, dark purple bruise around it. When I reported it to the correctional officers, they just looked at my wrist and then warned me sternly, "This conversation never happened. If I hear you talking about a guard like that again, I'll throw you in the hole." The old-timers in the cell block later explained. It was the ghost of Warden Miller, a notoriously cruel warden from the 1930s who was famous for torturing inmates to death. Occasionally, his ghost still walks the halls of the old prison block, making his rounds. The current guards all know about him, but they are terrified and forbid anyone from ever speaking his name. The last time I encountered the supernatural was the one that changed me forever. I don't remember what rule I broke, but I was thrown into solitary confinement, the hole. In that pitch-black, ice-cold, and utterly silent room, I wasn't just haunted from a distance, I was confronted directly. I don't know which of the three ghosts it was, I just felt a distinct, undeniable presence in the darkness with me. It didn't speak. It didn't touch me. It was just there. And in its presence, I felt the crushing weight of all the pain, the injustice, and the loneliness of every soul ever trapped within those walls. After that, the tough guy Sal was gone. I started to pray every night, not out of fear, but out of empathy. When I was finally released, I left my old life behind completely. The experiences in parish prison taught me a lesson no gangster ever could. There are forces in this world far more terrifying than guns and prison bars, and there are some debts that you can never fully repay, even after you're dead. My brother is a handful. This story was told to me by my cousin, Shane. It happened back when he was a senior in college. The setting was Burlington, Vermont. After 3 years in the cramped and rule-filled dorms, Shane and his best friends decided to rent an off-campus house for their final year to have a bit more freedom. Shane was the most enthusiastic of the group. He quickly found a rental house for a surprisingly cheap price. The place was clean. Everything seemed fine. He put down the deposit and signed the lease. But when he told his friends, "I got us a house, let's move in this weekend," everyone had an excuse. One had a family thing and needed 2 more weeks. Another hadn't gotten the money from his parents yet, and said it would be a month. With no other choice, Shane had to move in alone first. He never expected that decision would lead to the 4 most terrifying nights of his life. Night 1. The scratches. On his first night, Shane moved in with just a few essentials and his old blanket from the dorm. In the middle of the night, he woke up feeling itchy all over. He figured the new house must have some bugs, so he got up, turned on the lights, shook out his bedding, and even used a bug zapper. But he couldn't find a single insect. He lay back down, but the itching continued. A little later, he felt something sharp, like a toothpick, dragging lightly across his skin every time he moved. The stinging sensation made him jolt awake again. He sat up and searched his entire blanket, but found nothing. As long as he lay perfectly still, everything was fine. But the moment he shifted, the scratching sensation would return. The Vermont nights were cold. He couldn't just toss the blanket aside. He wrestled with the uncomfortable feeling until morning. The next day, when he looked in the bathroom mirror, he was horrified. His body, his arms, back, and chest was covered in long scratch marks. These weren't from his own nails. They were single, thin lines, some of them so deep they had drawn blood. He was convinced the problem had to be his old blanket and decided to buy a new one that very afternoon. Night 2. The Midnight Visitors. That evening, after a long day of classes and his part-time job, Shane came home and looked forward to sleeping under his brand new blanket. But in the middle of the night, he was woken up again. This time it wasn't scratching. He felt a tiny, ice-cold hand pinch his cheek. It was a very gentle pinch, like a small child playing a prank. He startled awake, rubbing his cheek and looking around the dark room, but he saw nothing. He closed his eyes. A moment later, the hand began to poke his neck, then playfully wiggle a finger in his ear, then gently tug at his sideburns. All of the activity was focused on his head, since the rest of his body was covered by the blanket. He sat bolt upright and flipped on the lights. The room was completely empty. He started to think that maybe he was just overworked and hallucinating. He turned off the light and tried to go back to sleep. But the second his head hit the pillow, a soft young woman's voice whispered right next to him. "Excuse me, sir. My little brother can be a bit of a handful. Please forgive him." Shane's eyes shot open. He looked across the large room. In the dim light filtering in from the street lamp outside, he saw the silhouette of a young woman sitting on the floor, holding a toddler-aged boy in her lap. He blinked, and in that instant, they were gone. The next morning, his 5:30 a.m. alarm went off. He groggily reached over to turn it off, his eyes still closed. As he was rubbing his face, he felt that same small, ice-cold hand again. It gently pushed his face to the side. He opened his eyes. The woman and the child were there again, this time sitting much closer, right at the foot of his bed. She whispered the same apology. "My little brother's a bit of a handful. Please don't be mad at him." And then they vanished. This time, Shane couldn't lie to himself anymore. He knew what he saw was real. Night 3. The warning. On the third night, Shane intentionally stayed out late, playing video games with his friends until he was exhausted. He hoped that if he was tired enough, he would sleep straight through the night. Around 2 a.m., he was woken by a knock at his door. Thinking it might be one of his friends, he went to open it. Standing in the doorway was the young woman he had seen the last 2 nights. This time, he could see her clearly under the porch light. She stood there, wringing her hands anxiously. "Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said. "My little brother is very mischievous. He just ran into your house. Could I come in and get him?" Shane was still half asleep, trying to process what was happening. The woman suddenly pointed past him. "There he is. He's on your bed." Shane turned and his blood ran cold. The small boy was bouncing up and down on his bed, but completely silently. His movements were slow and light, as if he were floating in the air. "I'll go get him," the woman said. She walked forward. Shane was still standing in the middle of the doorway, blocking her path. But before he could step aside, she walked straight through him. A cold so intense, it felt like it was freezing. His soul shot through his body. His heart felt like it stopped. He stood paralyzed, unable to move. Then he heard her voice whisper from behind him, from inside his own room. "Come on now, don't bother the man. He'll leave soon. He'll get scared and then we'll have our room back." He didn't dare turn around. He just heard her whisper, and then felt that soul-freezing cold pass through him once more as the two of them exited the house. When they were gone, Shane slammed the door shut, dove under his covers, and trembled until the sun came up. He knew he had to get out of that house immediately. Ne jeden korto. The final night. Unable to move all of his furniture by himself, Shane called me. He lied and said his landlord needed the room back unexpectedly. We spent the whole day moving, but we couldn't finish. That night, I had to stay over. Shane, desperate for the courage to sleep, bought a case of beer and got us both drunk. In the middle of the night, I woke up to see Shane tossing and turning restlessly. He was drenched in sweat, his eyes were closed, and he was grimacing as if in pain. A moment later, he sat up, got out of bed, and began to walk around the room. But his gait was strange, light and graceful, like a woman's. He circled the room as if searching for something. I thought maybe he was just drunk and sleepwalking. After a little while, he climbed back into bed. Around 4 a.m., I woke up again. This time, the sight before me was truly horrifying. Shane was sitting in front of the large mirror in the room. He was speaking in a high-pitched, feminine voice, and he was repeatedly slapping his own face. "Why won't you leave? Why are you so stubborn?" the voice shrieked. Give us our place back. Get out. The slaps got harder, and both of Shane's cheeks were turning bright red. Shane, what's wrong with you? I yelled and ran over to shake him. He didn't wake up. Instead, his possessed body turned to look at me, a grotesque smile spreading across his face. He won't leave, will he? I was so scared I let go. At that moment, Shane's body went completely limp and collapsed backward onto the floor, his head hitting the wood with a loud thud. He was knocked unconscious. When he finally came to, he didn't remember a thing. I told him everything that had just happened. After hearing my story, the color drained from my cousin's face. We didn't dare stay another second. In a frantic panic, we packed the rest of his things. By sunrise, we had loaded everything into a truck and fled that house, leaving the deposit behind without a word to the landlord. Later, Shane had to move back into the dorms for the rest of his senior year. We never tried to find out the history of that house, and we never knew who the ghosts of the sister and her little brother were. But one thing was certain. They were still there, waiting to get their room back from anyone else who dared to move in. That wasn't my sister anymore. This is a story my grandmother told me. This took place around the middle of the 20th century, when America was still suffocating under the lingering shadow of the Great Depression, a time when people clawed their way through each day just to stay alive. Back then, my grandmother was only a young girl, barely older than I am now, and tonight, I will become her, take on her very voice, and recount the harrowing tale that haunted her and her younger sister for the rest of their lives. My name is Jocelyn. This story is about me and my only younger sister, Jessica. We grew up in a small mill town in North Carolina. As the older sister, 10 years her senior, I had to grow up fast. I didn't finish high school. I had to drop out to work and help support our family. My life was all about responsibility and hard work, sheltered from the world. Jessica was the complete opposite. She was born when our family was more financially stable, spoiled since childhood, and blessed with a striking beauty. She grew up arrogant, defiant, and with a sense that the world owed her something. She never knew real hardship, and perhaps because of that, she never learned to be afraid. Her beauty was a gift, but it was also a curse. By the time she was 17, she was the belle of our town. Boys were always flocking around her, buying her gifts, taking her out. Life came to her so easily. She quickly fell in with a bad crowd and started dating a guy with a dangerous reputation. And then, tragedy struck. Her boyfriend was a drug dealer. Jessica, while not directly involved, was charged as an accomplice for knowing about his crimes and not reporting them. She was sentenced to over 3 years in the state penitentiary. The day Jessica got out of prison, everything had changed. 3 years behind bars had chipped away at her beauty. Her once vibrant face was now gaunt, her skin pale. She had lost everything, her friends, her admirers, her future. The only thing that remained was that same proud, defiant personality. After a few months of staying home, wallowing in self-pity, Jessica finally had to face reality. She needed a job. I had been working at the largest textile mill in town for years. He pulled some strings and got her a position on the factory floor. The mill was massive and steeped in rumors. The workers on the night shift would always whisper about strange occurrences in the women's restroom. They said they'd hear toilets flush in empty stalls, hear footsteps when no one was there, and see faucets turn on by themselves. Because of these stories, the female workers had an unwritten rule. You never, ever go to the restroom alone at night. When I told Jessica about this rule, she scoffed. "That's just a stupid story to scare kids," she said. "Do you think the prisons I was in were like some kind of park? I've seen things 1,000 times worse. A few ghost stories aren't going to scare me." And she proved it. During her first week on the night shift, Jessica always went to the restroom alone. On the first night, she went to the bathroom. A few minutes later, she came storming back to the production line, soaking wet and furious. She was cursing up a storm, claiming some crazy woman in the next stall had thrown wet paper towels over the partition to mess with her. She said when she went to confront the person, the other stall was empty. She was convinced one of our co-workers was playing a prank out of jealousy. On the second night, things escalated. This time, when Jessica went to the restroom, we suddenly heard screaming and the sound of something shattering from inside. A few of us rushed in to find Jessica alone, but acting as if she were in a physical fight. Her arms were flailing, she was shouting obscenities, and she even punched the mirror, cracking a large piece of it. When we pulled her out, she insisted that a woman had stood there, looking at us and smiling, a vacant, horrifying smile. Then, she slowly walked over to the conveyor belt, picked up a thick leather patch used for sewing onto the back of jeans and put it in her mouth. To our absolute horror, she began to chew it. She gnawed on the tough leather.